People are running around the streets in panic, screaming. A man with black hair and a black cloak is walking calmly along the road, holding an apple in his hands. He is saying out loud what a huge giant is destroying the city right in front of him. The city tower suddenly collapses. People are trying to make a barrier with their magic to prevent the debris from falling on people and houses. But one of the fragments of the broken tower falls quickly right onto a cat walking down the street. In time, the animal is cleverly saved by a man with black hair using barrier magic. People are shouting why this barrier is so huge. People say that the only one who can do this is the court magician. A man with a black beard yells at him, calling him a court magician, so that instead of saving the cat, he should save the people. Other people in the background echo the words of the bearded man. The magician tells them that he doesn't understand what they are talking about, because he is already saving them. He mysteriously says that the best defense is an attack. The action moves to the palace. The court magician is actually called Shield Reares. He is congratulated on his engagement. He is happy, but the girl next to him is tense, her gaze downcast. The court magician's companion is actually named Elaine. She clings to the boy, clutching his hand anxiously. Reares thanks everyone who came to the celebration and suddenly notices that something is wrong with the girl. He turns to her, asking what happened. Elaine's face changes. She tells her companion that everything is fine. Smiling sweetly, the girl tells Shield that it looks like today should be a very fun day. Shield Reares looks at his companion with pleasure, saliva dripping from his mouth. The people around him are also touched and admire the incredible beauty of the girl. The magician says that she is absolutely right. Inspired by the beauty of his girlfriend, Shield Reares wanted to announce something that from this moment on, but he was abruptly cut off mid-sentence. The captain of the Knight's Order burst into the hall, shouting the name of the court magician. People from the Knightly Order burst into the hall. Shield turns around and asks what happened. The crowd is confused. The man who bursts in addresses Shield Reares, publicly announces that he is expelling him from the country on suspicion of plotting a coup d'etat. Shield screams in panic that he did nothing of the sort. It must be a mistake or a trap. The companion next to him is not at all scared. She lowered her head down again, not looking at the faces of the people around her. The captain of the Knights throws a stack of papers on the floor in front of Shield, declaring that this is not a mistake. Evidence of a conspiracy was found in his own home. Shield does not believe. He is convinced that he is not involved in any conspiracy. The former court magician asks again in whose house the evidence was found, not believing the captain's words. The girl next to him suddenly apologizes to him. Shield does not understand what this is for. Elaine regrets, but admits that she entered her future husband's room without his permission. The girl justifies this by saying that she was worried about what he does at night, and when she entered the office, she found this evidence. The former court magician looks at his companion in surprise. He has absolutely no idea what evidence she is talking about, and what she could have found in his office. Standing near the captain of the Knight's Order and his ex-future wife, Shield Reares, looks at their faces anxiously. The girl hides her mad laughter, hiding half her face under her bangs, while the captain looks haughtily straight into the eyes of the court magician. Shield realizes he was set up. He doesn't understand why they did this to him. Sweat breaks out on his face. He's very worried. After all, he is a powerful former court magician. His barrier magic protected the country from invasion by other states and monsters. And now he is simply expelled from the country. She thinks that this is complete absurdity. It can't be. Pulling himself together, Shield asks if the king knows, and after a positive answer, he states that even if the king is involved in this, he has no choice but to simply remain silent. Shield Res is blown up and heads towards the exit. The panic completely disappears from Shield's face. He confidently heads for the exit, asking if he will be paid severance pay. To which they answer that he is apparently joking. The hero says goodbye and leaves the palace, leaving the crowd in bewilderment. Shield sat in the carriage looking off into the distance with a sad expression on his face, thinking to himself that he couldn't believe how this had happened. He had done absolutely nothing to make enemies. Recalling how he spent his days, the former court magician admits that he led a dissolute life, but never interfered in politics, and recently, many beautiful and noble ladies sought his favor, which he clearly liked. Reflections on why he was banished and accused of something he did not do greatly drowned Shield's Reares. He howled that it was so tiring. Why did it happen like this? The hero remembered that people asked him that he had promised to marry a very beautiful girl. He and his ex-girlfriend announced their engagement, and some people began to look at him with particular disdain. Looking at his hand, he clenches his fist tightly. The magician tells himself that he has not done anything bad in his entire life. On the contrary, he has tried to live each day with diligence and dedication to his work. Shield Ryares remembers his childhood, imagining himself as a child. He remembers how he was despised for using low-level magic, and the only thing he knew was barrier magic. But this did not break him. He began to improve his skill, to bring it to perfection. As he grew older, the former court mage continued to train and only became stronger in mastering the basic barrier magic. He trained every day since he was a child. Without even noticing it, Shield became the best and most powerful barrier mage in the country, and was given the title of court mage. He mastered basic, seemingly low, barrier magic. However, the barrier that the Shield has established around the country is unfortunately not as eternal as we would like. He thinks he was banished because they have a plan for when the barrier disappears. The magician rides in a carriage, gradually moving away from the country. He looks at the palace and the glowing reflections of the barrier as he leaves. As he passes the barrier he erected himself, Shield notices that the shield is probably already slowly reaching its limit. Then the hero asks himself whether he warned that the barrier is not eternal or not, although this no longer seems important. Leaving the capital, Shield managed to grab some money and a gold pocket watch. He was thinking about where he should go. The east is dangerous because of the dragons. He finds the north an uncomfortable place, and the west is the capital, so he decides to go south. But before going to other countries, Travel Shield Ryares enters the tavern to enjoy some delicious food. The former court magician took particular pleasure in enjoying the deliciously prepared food while sitting alone at the table. Happy with a glass and a piece of meat in his hands, he does not notice that behind him sit strange people in cloaks with their faces covered. After a hearty meal, Shield Ryares leaves the tavern, hearing some kind of rumble nearby. He thanks the old woman standing at the door of the tavern for the food. But 3 men in cloaks followed him, their faces not visible. The hero noticed them, and asked what they needed. The men replied that they were going to kill him, but this did not bother Shield at all. He remained calm and confident. The hero was not at all afraid of the strangers, because he knows that he perfectly masters the magic of the shield, which they will not be able to destroy. The former court magician, addressing the hooligans, says that they are apparently not going to solve the problems by talking. But such circumstances are for Shield himself. Ryares is much more convenient and profitable. One of the strangers only smirks arrogantly. A group of hooligans attacked him, revealing their faces. They raised their weapons, confidently heading towards Shield while he stood still, not moving. Shield noticed their stance. From their stance, he realized that they were from a knightly order. The former court mage concentrates on using a weapon destruction spell. Around the shield forms a bubble that protects him from enemy attacks. When one of the bullies attacks, Shield's barrier destroys his weapon. Shield tells the enemies that his specialty is barrier magic, but the hooligans, who expected that his enemy would not be so easy, also decided to use magic. One of them shouted that the preparations were already complete. Beneath Shield's feet began to shake. The mage realized that his opponents had activated gravity magic. Shield told the enemies that since he had activated it, the hero would also use it, only in his usual manner. With the help of the reflection spell, Shield reflects the attack back onto the enemies themselves. The opponents were defeated. Shield looked down at them with his arms crossed over his chest and said that he could only use defensive barrier magic. Although it may seem otherwise, he had achieved his position at court solely through barrier magic. The defeated stranger who attacked Shield, with trembling hands and lying on the ground under the pressure of gravity, admitted that he had only heard about Ryares himself, that he was just an ordinary barrier mage, nothing more. The hero asked the bandits lying at his feet who hired them, but they did not want to answer. The former court magician warned that gravity would affect them until he himself decided to turn it off. Shield says that, however, it doesn't matter and asks one of them that he is the leader of the knights, so let him say how many more are like him. The enemies lie at Shield's feet. They warn him that now that they have failed, others like them will come to try to kill him. It seems that someone clearly does not want the mage to return to his rightful position as court mage. Shield said he understood and snapped his fingers. The hero confesses to his enemies that his only ability is barrier magic. He is able to withstand any attacks forever, no matter how strong and resilient the enemy is. Ryares' shield magic cannot be defeated. Afterwards, he calmly lets the enemies go. Standing on the street, the magician was wondering what to do next. All avenues to remain in the country secretly are now completely closed. The south is the safest option, but that is why his pursuers can get ahead of him, and the north will probably be the same. Most likely, the former court magician would have to go east, although this was the option he least wanted to use. Shield looked into the distance at the mountains, continuing to think about how he should manage the road. They say that the road is full of insects. Suddenly, Shield yelled into the sky that he swears to the captain of the knightly order that he will get him if even one insect dares to sit on his shoulder. Shield yelled even louder that he will destroy the one responsible for his exile, so much did the magician not want to meet insects on his way. Starting his journey along the road leading east, Shield Reares made sure that not a single insect landed on him. However, he encountered a couple of insects. At the sight of the small, cute creatures, the magician ran away into the depths of the forest with horror and tears in his eyes, screaming in horror and begging for someone's help. Not paying attention to where he runs, the magician suddenly stumbles upon a huge dragon with horns and fangs in the depths of the forest. For a few moments, they both look at each other as if waiting for the next step of the stranger who suddenly appeared in front of him. Shield sighs lightly, closes his eyes, and tells himself that it's just a dragon. But the ancient creature is offended by Shield's words. Reares. The dragon asks the hero why he is ignoring him. Shield is confused and does not understand where the voice is coming from. Shield looks at the dragon, who screams that it is his voice. The magician looks at the creature in front of him in confusion. He is amazed that the dragon is actually able to speak human language. He has never seen anything like it before. The dragon, addressing Shield, says that he is Bahamut, a representative of the strongest species. He finds it amusing that the man in front of him does not know who he is. But now the mage has interested the dragon with his ignorance, so the creature decides to eat him. Shield Reares is frightened by the dragon's words. He smiles awkwardly and asks him not to eat. Sweat appears on the hero's face. She turns slightly, preparing to simply leave. But the dragon takes off with lightning speed and heads straight for the magician with its mouth open, ready to eat him. Shield uses the barrier spell, Physical Reflection. The mage deftly gets into position and uses the barrier again, reflecting the dragon's power. The creature, having hit the shield, turns around and its body is thrown away from the former court magician. The hero stands in place, focused on using his magic. The dragon stands up in front of the powerful mage. He is confused that a human could repel his attack. Rocks fly around them, dust rises, and a small ditch forms, creating a path through the forest. The dragon asks the human if his attack was repelled. The enemy cannot believe that the power of a powerful, ancient creature can be repelled by the most ordinary person. However, the dragon flies up, preparing to make another attack and finally eat this strange man. The dragon flies above the magician. Shield uses barrier magic again, Physical Reflection, to reflect the dragon's attack, and it is successful. The creature is thrown far upwards. The former court magician continues to stand in one place, as if nothing happened. Shield Reares stands perfectly calmly, watching how far the dragon was thrown upward by his physical reflection during the fight. A huge tooth fragment suddenly falls next to the powerful and indifferent magician. The dragon returns to Earth. Blood flows from the dragon's mouth. He is furious and confused as to why such a simple barrier magic can be so powerful that he can destroy it, even though a completely ordinary person stands before him. Shield replies that it is a barrier. It is impossible to break it just like that. Then the dragon looks at his opponent in surprise, asking him how such simple magic is able to repel his attacks. Shield stands in one place with his arms crossed over his chest. He smirks, pleased with himself that even a huge dragon can't destroy his magic that he has been perfecting for 10 years. The dragon goes berserk. He doesn't believe that this mage doesn't have a weak spot. Preparing for a new attack, a fireball appears in his mouth. Wisps of smoke and energy swirl around him. Shield continues to humbly watch the dragon's behavior, not worrying at all about his safety. Shield, watching the dragon, prepares for another attack. He thinks it's best to keep the barrier ready. He watches the huge creature's behavior with concentration. The dragon lifts its head up, accumulating energy in its mouth. The ball of light sparkles and smokes. Flying up, the dragon suddenly attacks the powerful mage from the sky, directing all its power at the man. Clouds of dust rise around him, blocking Shield's view. But Reares successfully holds the defense. The dragon's attack does not touch him at all. While holding the defense, the mage notices that the dragon's attack resembles a beam of light, but in fact, this substance reminds him of magma. An interesting new idea comes to the hero's mind. Instead of using physical power reflection, he uses the magic reflection spell. Shield successfully reflects the dragon's magic and incinerates it. The dragon only says his last words, surprised that Shield is an ordinary person. The hero learns that even the most powerful dragon species is quite weak, which only confirms how terrifying their own power is. Shield decides to move further along the ditch that was formed during their battle. The magician thinks to himself that this ditch looks more like the result of a natural disaster than magic. The mage moves closer to the pile of ash that was created after the dragon's magic was reflected. He thinks to himself that the rain of magma that the dragon created was quite powerful, so it is no wonder that the creature itself could not withstand it. Suddenly, a man appears on a black pile of ashes, saying what a mess it is here. A beautiful girl with long blonde hair and horns sat naked on the ground. She addresses the mage, saying that he is very strong. Her fangs and narrow pupils are visible. It turns out that this girl is the dragon, Bakhmut. She admits that she hasn't taken human form for a long time. Shield is shocked that the girl in front of him is that huge dragon. But the completely naked appearance embarrasses Shield and he asks her to put something on. Then Bakhmut declares that people are quite strange in this regard. She completely forgot about it. With a snap of her fingers, a beautiful outfit appeared on her, a dress that exposed her shoulders. And on her lower back, small dragon wings were visible. The former court magician looked at her with special delight. At first, the former court magician admires the beauty of her outfit and her pretty appearance, but then it dawns on him that her outfit is completely unsuitable for a walk in the forest. He asks her if she couldn't have chosen other clothes. The dragon replies that she shouldn't demand too much from her. Shield agrees that it doesn't matter anymore. Then Bakhmut decides to become the magician's companion. She thinks that he looks funny and admits that for the first time she couldn't eat a person during her entire time in the forest. Shield is not at all against her company. He states that he is already basically bored of traveling alone. At that moment, the dragon says that he should go ahead. She should prepare something, and then she will catch up with him. The magician is puzzled by her reticence. He looks at her sideways from behind. Baring her fangs, she will suddenly attack him from behind, screaming that it is too late, he was too careless. Preparing to bite off a piece of his body with her mouth and grab him with her sharp claws, she madly rushes at the hero. However, there was no surprise. Shield was prepared for such an attack. Trying to bite the guy, her fang breaks on the magician's barrier. He laughs at her, explaining that he always has an invisible barrier, after which he uses magic and throws her to the ground. The girl, sitting on the ground, became upset and began to cry, looking at his back as he became further and further away from her. The magician did not pay attention to this, continued walking and simply called her to follow him, to move further into the forest along the path they had dug during the fight. The dragon girl stood up easily, forgetting about her tears, and ran after the former court magician. Shield folded his hands behind his head and declared that he was hungry, continuing to walk forward. Two animals appeared right in front of them, and behind them the forest was burning because of the Bakhmut fire. Shield looked around the area in confusion as he made his way through the bushes. The dragon looked at him sadly. Then the girl said that this was the wrong road, he had turned aside too quickly. The magician sighed, smiling at the short girl. A slight embarrassment appeared on his face. But then the magician tensed up and told her that since she knew the way so well, she should go ahead. Otherwise, why would she walk only behind him? He was a little alarmed that the dragon was trailing behind, as if planning to attack him and eat him again, even knowing that she was unlikely to succeed. The companion's supplies were already running low. The magician's bag contained only one apple and bread. Shield was angry at the dragon for eating a week's supply of tasty provisions. He hoped that they were almost to the city, but Bakhmut answered him that they still had a long way to go. However, the dragon then admitted that she ate their supplies not because they were tasty, but because she was curious about what human food tasted like. However, it turned out that she found it much more pleasant to feed on fresh blood than on regular food. Continuing along the road, looking for the city, Shield suddenly declared that the name Bakhmut was too long. Then the dragon suggested that he call her Faye, as she had been called before. Shield appreciated her idea and agreed that it would be simpler. In any case, it made no difference to Faye herself. At the request of the magician, Faye told the magician that they, dragons, do not attack cities because people are not tasty. Besides, people can often fight back, and this is too troublesome for dragons. Shield asked her to hurry up because he wanted to take a bath. Faye said that he was going the wrong way again. The magician turned around and replied that he was joking. The magician noticed that throughout the entire journey they did not meet any other dragons or their minions. He thinks that Faye is still useful in some way, although she is damn annoying when she watches him even while he is busy with his own business. The magician looked at Faye from behind. She asked what was the matter. He answered that nothing was the matter. Finally, at the end of the road, leaving the forest, the travelers reached the city of Aigin. There were many happy people walking around the street, smiling from ear to ear, and there were many food stalls. Faye ordered him to feed her. The sight of a luxurious city inspired the magician to start a new, second life. He decided that he would become an adventurer and live here happily, carrying out various orders to destroy monsters or help all the citizens of the city. This idea filled all his thoughts. Shield began to think that his new life would begin here, but Shield was unable to complete his first task of destroying small monsters in the cave. With his barrier magic, he is too weak in attack. Faye was surprised that he, a powerful mage, couldn't deal with weaklings. Shield objected, he only uses barrier magic. Having asked Faye to help him, he received a refusal and a remark that he was weak, did not have any knowledge, and did not understand herbs. Shield finally gave up, falling to the ground insignificantly. He decided that he was a terrible adventurer and his second life was doomed. When the former court magician fell to the ground in despair, a watch fell out of his bag. This watch gave him a great idea. He came to Count Albert for work. He sincerely thanked the Count for the invitation. But as soon as he heard about the request to become a mentor for the Count's daughter, the magician became confused. Faye told him he was acting strange. Shield replied that survival was more important to him. They say that Count Albert's daughter is a genius magician, but Shield is not sure that he can become her mentor, since he only knows barrier magic perfectly. Shield doesn't know what he can teach the Count's daughter. But Faye wasn't listening, she was staring straight ahead. Shield asked what she was staring at. The Count led the travelers to the table. Shield and Faye's brains shut down at the sight of food. The heroes stared at the food. The mage said they had to eat it all. Faye replied that her decision to follow him had finally paid off. The travelers, like wild animals, pounced on the food. Shield devoured the food greedily. The heroes ate and paid absolutely no attention to the Count's questions. The former court magician mentally replies to Count Albert that he has no time to worry about etiquette, since he is currently dying of hunger. A beautiful, stately girl with blonde hair enters the room. She looks at Shield with disdain. The mage, in turn, notices the surprising amount of magic emanating from the girl. After Shield saw that the young Count's daughter possessed a large amount of powerful magic, the former court magician panicked and decided that he needed to eat his fill before he was fired. After the meal, Count Albert invites the heroes to his office. Shield thinks that the time has come for his dismissal. The Count introduces his daughter to her future mentors, saying that they are court magicians from the kingdom of Helena. The Count continues to say that people have come to discover her talent. The Count's daughter thanks her father for the opportunity to study with powerful people. Tears welled up in her eyes. The girl seems to Shield quite nice and diligent. After the Count leaves the room, Shield sighs and decides to come closer to the girl to tell her how glad he is to meet her. As soon as the door closed, Amelia's expression changed instantly. Looking haughtily at the travelers, she ordered Shield to tell the whole truth about himself, otherwise he would have problems. The magician was completely confused by such a statement. Shield, becoming tense and a little intimidated by the behavior of the Count's daughter. That at first he did not understand what she meant. The girl boldly sits down on a chair, putting one leg on the other. Shield's words that they were both real court magicians, although he had a pocket watch that looked, in her opinion, genuine, she thought that he bought it or found it somewhere. Shield was unable to answer this question, only becoming embarrassed. Amelia advised them to confess to their father that they were imposters. He was kind and would not blame them. On the contrary, he would think that it was his fault that he had let himself be deceived. She warned them that if they did not want to get into trouble, they should tell her the whole truth. Shield looked into Amelia's eyes, and she looked into his too. Then the traveler asked the young countess if she saw that huge, great, magical barrier covering the kingdom of Helena, to which the girl replied, "Of course, because the whole continent knows about it." Shield was slightly embarrassed by Amelia's statement that this barrier was known to the entire continent. She asked why he was suddenly embarrassed. He answered the countess that it was he who erected the barrier. Shield stated that he was the one who created this magical barrier. The girl suddenly became offended. She admitted that she deeply respected Helen's court magicians and would not allow him to call herself one of them. She threatened him that he would regret it if he said something like that again. Amelia said that she would one day become a court mage too. Shield noticed that she had the same aura as the court mages and repeated that he was one of those 10. The magician repeated once again that it was he who created that famous barrier, but he was expelled as soon as he became a political liability. The Countess did not believe that the country could so easily expel its hero. On the contrary, he should be honored and respected. Shield said that it was true, and he was really expelled. The young Count's daughter stood up from her chair and, without looking at the travelers, ordered them to get out of the house. Talking to him really irritates her. To which Shield replies that he came here in search of work, he needs income, and this is the ideal option. Shield glanced sideways at Faye, demanding confirmation of his words, but Bakhmut only answered why she had to say anything to convince this grumpy girl. Rayara's replied that she only spoke like that after she had eaten her fill. Putting on snow-white gloves, Amelia confesses to the 2 travelers that she had no intention of taking lessons from the mage anyway. She ordered him to at least not interfere and stand silently in the corner while she practiced. Shield thought to himself that at least he would keep an eye on this young daughter of Count Albert, for now that was the only thing he could do. The young countess went out into the courtyard, and the travelers followed her. In the courtyard, Shield saw a magic doll that was very worn out. He concluded that the girl was serious about becoming a court magician, which amazed him. The young countess began to cast spells. Magic balls with different elements appeared around her: fire, air, earth, and water. The former court mage had identified her specialization as attack magic. The girl concentrated, closing her eyes. The girl easily attacked the magic dummy with 4 elements. Shield carefully watched her every move. To his surprise, she even knew how to use auxiliary strengthening magic to make the blow even faster and stronger. Amelia broke the magic doll with her attack magic, and the mannequin's arm fell off. Watching this, Shield was deeply impressed by the power of the young sorceress. Such control and diversity made her on the level of a high mage. The Countess created another ball of energy in her hands. She concentrated the magic in one place and said out loud that she still needed more practice. Rayara's Shield looked at the young sorceress with admiration. When she finished training, he clapped her and said that it was incredible. Amelia paid no attention to him, standing with her eyes closed and breathing heavily. A moment later she turned to him, adjusting her battle doll, and ordered him not to talk to her. She looked at him with eyes of contempt and disgust. The former court mage didn't pay attention to her order. He watched her adjust the combat training doll and asked her if these dummies were so worn out. Then she only trained on them. Then a great idea popped into his head. The mage concluded out loud that the young sorceress clearly lacked combat experience. He ordered her to come forward. As her mentor, he was going to train her in a real fight. Amelia told him if he could definitely handle this task, since the other mentors had fled. Shield Rayarez just smiled sweetly and told her to stop teasing her. He himself would show her what it meant to be a real court magician. His proposal interested the young daughter of Count Albert. She turned to face him, pointed her finger at him, and ordered that she had now used up all her magic, so in order not to kill him, they must fight hand to hand. Shield was dumbfounded by such a proposal. He asked her again, surprised that she wanted to fight hand to hand. The young, fragile-looking sorceress confidently cracked her fingers in her fist, preparing to seriously arm wrestle the former court magician. The Count's daughter noticed the tension in the former court magician's face and decided to ask him if court magicians weren't supposed to have martial arts. To which Shield, moving away from her, replied that of course they should. The mage decided that Faye might be the one asking about this, so he asked her if she would like to engage in hand-to-hand combat with the Count's daughter instead of him. Sweat was breaking out on Shield's face. He was clearly worried that he wouldn't be able to handle Amelia, just like he hadn't handled the monsters in the cave. Faye, lying on the grass and enjoying the spectacle, said that if she did this, she might accidentally kill her and generally ruin everything, but she really liked the food here, so she did not want to give up such a pleasure. Bakhmut looked straight into the eyes of the former court mage, warning him that he had better not lose to this girl, as she wanted to stay here as long as possible and enjoy the food here. Shield became sad and tense, saying that he understood her warning. The fight between Amelia and the mage began. The girl was the first to move. She jumped up sharply. Shield watched her legs. Based on her movements, he convinced himself that he could keep up with her speed. The mage himself took a suitable stance to quickly attack or defend himself. A moment later, while the former court mage stood still, Amelia quickly made an attack. The girl threw her leg up to hit the guy right in the neck. But when she touched Shield's body, she hit her foot on the magical barrier that always covered the boy's body. The young sorceress felt a strong pain in her leg. She fell to the ground and grabbed the area with her hand that she had aimed at the mage's neck. Amelia looked at him and said loudly that he was quite strong. But the young sorceress decided not to stop there. She stood up from the ground, hissing because of the pain in her leg, and, shouting that she would hit him again, she clenched her hand into a fist and pointed it straight at the former court magician, with full confidence that this time she would be able to hit him. Shield immediately realized that she was aiming for his face, so he quickly crossed his arms in front of him to protect himself from the blow. But Amelia, watching his movements, realized that he had successfully fallen for her trick. She made a feint, in fact aiming for the mage's stomach. Shield's magical barrier while attacking. Tears appeared in her eyes as she looked at her broken hand. The girl squatted down, shaking in pain. Shield just laughed, saying that no matter where she aimed, the result would be the same. The Count's daughter, in tears, held her broken arm in her other hand. She turned to Shield, asking him if he was constantly feeding on iron so that his body was so hard that it broke her bones. The former court magician was glad that she finally began to take him seriously as an opponent. He asked her if that meant he had won. If she couldn't defeat him, then they wouldn't be able to fire him and he and Faye would stay in the mansion. Amelia looked at her new mentor, still with tears in her eyes from the pain. She agreed that she would let him stay a little longer. Since he was so resilient, her spells would not be able to kill him so easily. The delighted former court magician ran up to Faye, who had been lying on the grass all this time. She shouted that they could stay longer in the mansion. They finally had a place to live and food. Disappointed in herself, the Countess turned away from the travelers, her arm still hurting. Amelia was leaving the training ground, but Shield managed to shout after her that he would continue to be her mentor. She interrupted him, telling him to shut up and calling him an imposter. The girl threatened to get rid of him soon, he just needed to wait. Faye and Shield were happy that tonight they would be able to eat their fill of delicious food again. The young daughter of the Count quietly walked away from them. When the magician woke up, the servants told him that Amelia had fallen ill and was now lying in her chambers. He did not believe the servants' words and declared that until he was convinced of this himself, he would not listen to what they told him. Shield headed to the Countess's chambers. Throwing open the door to the girl's bedroom, the former court magician called Amelia, but saw the girl lying on the bed with her eyes closed. Her face was flushed from the fever, and there was a terrible bruise on her right hand. Shield noticed that the girl had a high fever when he put his hand to her forehead. He looked closer at her hand, assuming that the girl was bleeding internally, probably having broken something during the fight. Reyarez told the maid that he would try to heal her. Following the former court magician, Faye entered Amelia's room, rubbing her eyes after sleep. The dragon offered her friend help in healing the girl. But Shield refused. He seriously told Faye to leave it to him, since he was Amelia's mentor. Shield used healing magic to heal Amelia from the injuries she sustained from her hand-to-hand combat with him. He concentrated seriously as he stood over her. Upon learning that Amelia had recovered from her wounds, Shield and Faye decided to bring the Countess some food to her chambers. The serious girl quickly left the room and went to Shield, demanding to see his face. As the young sorceress left the room, she came face to face with the magician who had healed her. She looked at them, deep in thought, and a tear rolled down her face. After some time, Amelia and Shield met again in the hallway of the mansion. The guy smiled at her, greeting her and saying that he was glad that she had recovered well. The young countess turned dismissively to the former court magician, informing him that she had heard that it was he who had healed her from her injuries after the battle. The girl looked at her hand, on which there used to be a bruise. She began to think out loud, in order to treat so effectively, he probably is clearly not just a swindler. However, the girl noticed that he was still insincere with her. It was hard for her to believe that he was a former court magician. The young sorceress turned her gaze back to the mage, saying that thanks to his actions, she decided to give him another chance. But this time, she decided to measure her strength with him in his so-called magic. Shield stared at her in bewilderment, but she sharply shouted that they had to go right now. The heroes came out to the training ground. Shield stood, listening to his students' orders and rubbing his neck. Amelia, crossing her arms over her chest, announced that the rule was simple. The fight continues until one of them gives up. Everything else is allowed. The former court magician was delighted with his students' announcement. He decided that this was a great chance for him, and in this case, he would show her everything he knew and could do on her own experience. Amelia used magic to create a fire arrow and aimed it straight at Shield. She told him that he would not regret it even if he died in this fight. Shield was not at all frightened by this. The former court mage watched Amelia's magic. He saw that she created a fire arrow using simple magic and was a little happy, hoping that the fight would be easy. He laughed and told the student that she probably underestimated him. But at that very moment, thousands of the same fiery arrows appeared around the young sorceress, directed towards the powerful magician. Shield gasped in surprise. A furious Amelia looked at her new mentor expectantly, her face more reminiscent of a villain. The young countess turned to the mage and asked him if he could withstand the continuous attacks coming his way. The former court mage looked at his student in surprise. Seeing thousands of similar fire arrows in front of him, he thought to himself that it didn't even take her 3 seconds to activate them all. The barrier mage, confident in his powers, began to cast his defense. The thought crossed his mind that he should be a little more serious about this girl, but in any case, try not to cause her any harm. The mage focused on his spell, standing still as thousands of Amelia's fiery arrows flew at him, creating a shield that absorbed the magic. Every arrow that touched his barrier instantly disappeared due to his spell. The young sorceress, who had been certain a moment before that her attack would be able to harm the master, exclaimed in surprise as she watched each of the arrows disappear as soon as they touched the magical barrier. She did not understand what kind of magic this was. But at that very moment, the girl had a new plan. If so, then she would direct a strong stream of air at him, using elemental magic. She didn't care even if she harmed him. However, this attack also disappeared after touching the magician. Shield himself stood in one place, practically motionless, his face expressing no emotion. The young sorceress was furious. She was angry because none of her attacks penetrated the magical barrier that her mentor had built. Her hair was disheveled. She cast another water spell and shouted at him. Rings of water formed around her wrist. She aimed an elemental spell at the mage, who was still standing motionless. He didn't react to her at all. Huge waves of furious water rose around the mage, but he just stood there. Shield, behind his magical barrier, came up with a new plan while observing what techniques and attacks his rival was using. He said out loud that it would be dangerous if her attack actually hit its target. The wizard's eyes sparkled. He looked ahead with a grin and thanked Amelia for the treat, absorbing all of his new student's magic with a barrier spell. When all of the girl's attacks were repelled, the former court magician, mocking her, asked what she was going to do next. Suddenly, the entire sky above him was covered with clouds, while earlier, the bright sun was shining in the courtyard of the mansion. Shield looked around and asked himself if it was really raining, but it was another technique of the young countess. The barrier mage didn't immediately realize what the rain was about. He asked Amelia, who was standing in front of him, if it was just a hindrance because he was already frozen. The girl was standing with her eyes closed, shaking her hands at that moment. However, the girl easily answered him that it was ice magic. Shield looked at his legs. They were covered in a thick layer of ice, preventing him from moving. The magician exclaimed that this couldn't be happening. He couldn't move even slightly. The ice completely covered his feet. The young sorceress extended her hand forward and exclaimed, creating a new spell, an ice gust. Thousands of sharp ice flows were aimed at Shield. Amelia, delighted that she had almost defeated her mentor, suggested that he surrender himself. The sudden flow of ice flows aimed at the court magician did not take him by surprise, but rather excited his interest in Amelia's magic. He was delighted by the creativity of the young sorceress, calling her a genius. Shield's body was covered with a strong barrier. He knew perfectly well that even such serious, powerful attacks from the Countess were not able to destroy his spell, which he had perfected over the years. Despite Amelia's efforts, none of her attacks hit the mentor. His magical barrier is universal and absolutely perfect. All the ice blocks shattered when they collided with the mage's barrier. He continued to stand there, moderately and arrogantly. The power of the former court magician really amazed the young countess. She screamed that it was unfair. Every attempt she made was in vain. She became very angry with her new mentor. The girl fell into despair. Completely exhausted and tired, having spent all her strength on the fight, she gave up, leaning on the battered magical training doll. While Shield stood quietly, watching his rival's actions, Amelia became furious. She wondered what kind of magic the imposter was using that even she couldn't control. Confident in his abilities, Happy Shield agreed to tell her about his magic on the condition that she call him sensei. Such a request threw Amelia off balance, but she gave in. The Countess awkwardly called her new mentor sensei. Continuing to mock the girl, Shield, after asking her to tell him about her magic, demanded to be called sensei again in order to feel more proud of himself. Amelia found it too humiliating to give in to his request again, so she threatened him, telling him that he should be less proud of himself. Shield simply laughed and apologized to her. The mage confessed to the Countess that the only magic he had was barrier magic. Amelia became very irritated after his words. She found it ridiculous that such a powerful wizard could use the most basic magic, and at the same time reflect any of her attacks. Shield repeated to her that although he could only use barrier magic, it was because of his excellence in this magic that he became a court mage and built a huge magical barrier, which, as she herself stated, the entire continent knew about. Only now does Amelia realize how wrong she was about her new mentor. She can't believe that it is he, Shield, Riares, is indeed the very same, legendary Shield, one of the top 10 court magicians of Helen. Moreover, Amelia could not believe that the country had actually exiled its legendary hero. The girl's words sounded like a blow to the street for Shield, because he himself did not understand how this could happen to him. After asking Riares if he was really a great Shield and hearing a positive answer from him, the girl still couldn't come to her senses. She screamed and ran away in the opposite direction from the magician. Shield didn't understand what kind of strange reaction the girl had. Sometime later, when Shield and Faye were quietly having dinner, Amelia quietly peeped at him from behind the door, afraid to come closer. This attention irritated Faye, but the magician answered her that it frightened him, but he was trying to ignore her. All arrogance disappeared from the Countess's face. She was happy that he really was one of her idols. She bowed to the magician, lowering her head onto the dining table. Amelia felt ashamed of her behavior, that she considered him an imposter, and did not want to believe in the power of his magic. She admitted to the mentor that her arrogant personality was not real, but he himself understood perfectly well that now her manner was feigned. The Countess burst into tears and wanted to run away so as not to be disgraced in front of her idol. But the magician grabbed her by the collar of her dress and said that everything was fine, offering her to just eat. During the meal, Amelia glanced awkwardly at Faye and Shield. The Countess allowed herself to ask what the relationship was between the Great Shield and his companion, with whom he had come to Count Albert's palace. Faye ignored the girl's question, but Shield answered himself, telling how he met a dragon in the forest that tried to eat him, won the battle, repelling all of her attacks, and in the end, she simply began to follow him. Amelia was initially stunned to find that a real dragon in human form was sitting next to her. Faye gave her real name in a friendly manner and extended her hand, saying that it was a pleasure to meet her. The girl did not doubt the magician's words. Only now did Faye suddenly remember that they had not yet chosen the next leader of the dragon forest. If they did not, the dragons might attack the city. Shield asked menacingly, how could they forget such an important detail? The mage decided that since it was because of him that Faye followed him, they had no choice but to deal with it. Bakhmut supported him, saying that they should appoint a leader before they set out on their journey. Only Amelia objected. The heroes asked the girl why. The worried Countess noted that dragons are creatures of incredible power. If Shield does something wrong, it could lead to a war similar to the one that happened 300 years ago and engulfed the entire world. The travelers replied that everything would be fine. Just entering the forest, the heroes met a huge dragon. Shield and Faye were completely calm, only Amelia looked at the creature with eyes full of horror. Unlike the other heroes, she saw a dragon in front of her for the first time. Faye looked boldly into the dragon's eyes. She addressed him as Nidhogg, the Black Dragon. And she ordered that he would be the one to inherit the leadership. He should not harm people, otherwise the war that Amelia mentioned would start. But the Black Dragon did not want to listen to the fairy's orders. He continued to snap and growl. Then the girl turned back into a dragon to confront her kinsman. Two huge figures of creatures ready to fight frightened the Countess. Shield picked up Amelia and walked away from the dragons a little. The girl was worried about Faye. She thought it was dangerous to leave her alone with him. To which the magician calmly replied that he would prefer to see the young sorceress fighting these creatures, because a court magician should be able to do at least that. The dragons began to fight. The boy watched the fighting dragons from afar. They soared into the sky, scratched and directed light beams at each other. The mage was clearly worried about something. His face became noticeably more serious. He put Amelia on the ground. She looked at him in bewilderment, calling him a great shield. The mage ignored her and began to cast a spell on the barrier. The ordinary basic spell that Shield had mastered to perfection seemed like a great miracle in Amelia's eyes. She watched as he cast a spell, as a huge, strong protective barrier appeared around him, although for the magician himself such a spell was a common thing. The dragons continued to fight stubbornly, clashing with their claws and destroying everything in their path. They flew high above the city, not paying attention to the fact that they could hit people or destroy the city. Amelia and Shield watched the creatures from below. The mage instructed his apprentice to think about how she could fight such an opponent, to which the countess confidently said that it was impossible, although Shield had previously defeated Faye with his barrier. In the clouds of smoke, the heroes noticed that the black dragon was clearly inferior to Faye in strength and was increasingly unable to cope with her attacks. The magician watches with satisfaction what is happening in the sky, while the young sorceress is still frightened. Having defeated the enemy, Faye gracefully descends back to the heroes in human form. She has only one scratch on her cheek. Amelia is convinced in her thoughts that the creature before her is a real problem. Shield quickly realized that she had not killed her opponent. Confident in her abilities, Faye replied that there was no need, that she had easily defeated him, so that he would obey her orders. Faye was uneasy that the guy was speaking too calmly. Amelia is completely broken. For her, what she saw is an incredible event, while Faye and Shield act as usual, as if the legendary dragon had not just been defeated, and the city was not protected by a huge magical barrier. While the Countess was thinking about everything that had happened in her head, Faye warned the magician that he couldn't just put up such a huge barrier in the city, because he might get drawn into politics again. Such are people who have received great power, trying to use it to their advantage. The heroes returned back to the lands of Count Albert. He admits that he knew about Shield's status, but did not suspect how powerful and famous he really was on the continent. Suddenly, the Count makes a radical decision. He fires Shield. He is sorry to say this, but he cannot allow the magician to continue to be his daughter's mentor. What influenced his opinion is unknown. Shield Reyarez stood up abruptly from his seat and shouted angrily at the Count across from him. He couldn't believe he had been so easily deprived of his job as a tutor. Faye sat silently, but her expression showed disappointment. The Count explained his decision based on the mage's powerful abilities. He was able to change the balance of power on the entire continent. If Shield remained, it could lead to destabilization of relations with neighboring countries. That's how serious things were. The mage thinks that the Count's words make little sense, because why would the country banish a man who can single-handedly create a protective barrier for the entire country? Shield suspects that perhaps they have a secret plan, because of which they no longer need the mage. Only thanks to this barrier, the Kingdom of Helena was able to demonstrate its strength to its neighboring countries in recent years. It is no exaggeration to say that this protective barrier erected by the magician determined the fate of the entire continent. Shield thought he had a high reputation in other countries too. But Reyarez recalls that he was not considered a hero in his own country. People whispered that his ability to create magical barriers was a given, and many opposed his appointment as court mage. Count Albert is very upset after Shield's monologue. The man considers it absurd, as if the people of Helena, who call themselves a great nation, are completely blind and do not see the talent in the great magician. Count Albert took a pause, pulling himself together. He explained that he was currently negotiating with the central government, but that this was not something he could resolve alone. Amelia looked at her father with longing and sadness on her face. Shield couldn't stand the tension. He covered his face with his hands, hiding his tears. The mage was disappointed in the efforts he had put into becoming a mentor. Faye told him that it was obvious, based on the extent to which he used magic. Reyarez accused Faye that if she had defeated Nidhoga a little more cleverly, the dismissal would not have happened. Faye believes otherwise, because if she had let her guard down for even a second, she would have been the one who lost the fight. Not believing his ears, the Count asked the travelers if they had both fought the gods Nidhogg and Bahamut. Shield and Faye did not quite understand why he called the legendary dragons gods. Then the young sorceress told her father about the fairies. In fact, the girl is Bakhmut. Jay in the form of a human dragon cannot completely hide his golden wings, and it was she who repelled Nidhogg's attack on the city, protecting its inhabitants from destruction. In the country of Urai, where Aegon is located, dragons are considered gods. The Count finds it hard to believe that one of them is sitting across from him right now, calmly drinking tea. Faye's face became confident from such attention, showing off her greatness. Realizing what kind of people were in front of him, Count Albert, in a very polite manner, sincerely asked them to wait for the arrival of the official representatives of the country. But then came a proposal from Count Shildu. If he were offered to stay in this country, he could become an ally. Count Albert's question made the magician think seriously. Reyarez honestly admitted that he does not know the exact answer to Albert's proposal. The magician fears that in the future he might be used again as a tool and then thrown away as soon as his person becomes a problem in politics. Expulsion from his own country, dismissal negatively affected the mage's vision of this world. He wonders if there is no good way to live, if there is a way to live freely. A variety of delicious, juicy dishes were served at the table, interrupting the former court mage's train of thought. Shield and Faye looked with delight at the trays of food, ready to begin their meal. The guy seriously wondered if the cooks had made the food even more luxurious than yesterday after learning his true identity. Shield even doubted that he would be able to eat it all. However, Faye was determined to eat it all without leaving any leftovers. During dinner, the magician noticed that Amelia was looking at him differently than before. To which Faye replied that she probably just really liked him. And she added that the guy really knows how to get into unpleasant situations, which is why the dragon found him interesting. The mage began to wonder about Faye's motives. Perhaps she had ulterior motives towards him. He wondered if it was normal to travel with people like her. In any case, Faye admits that if she starts to get irritated by the company of people, she will simply leave with him. She would like to run away somewhere far from people and travel with the great magician. Shield thought she was pretty fun right now, so it was okay. After dinner, Shield packed his things, put on a long white cloak, and was about to go on his journey with Faye and Amelia. During their adventures, the sorceress's love for the magician often led him astray, causing him to get into more trouble. The young sorceress was tightly squeezing the former court magician's hand. Shield thought to himself that he had the impression that the girl was clinging to him like glue and simply could not tear herself away from him. Shield was clearly uneasy with his companion's behavior, but he did not allow himself to treat her too roughly, only calmly stating that he was uncomfortable with her being so close. Amelia herself enjoyed the company of the magician. Faye noted that Amelia was acting like a cat in heat. Shield was very upset by her comment. The magician just wanted to walk the streets of the Dragon Country city with two beauties, but for some reason he is not happy with the current situation. He can only hope that nothing strange will happen during this day. Suddenly, the magician saw a silhouette of an unknown person standing on the roof of the house. The travelers had difficulty making out the face because of the sun, which blinded their eyes. The unknown person, turning to Shield, said that he was exactly as people described him. The stranger had ears on his head like a fox. The unfamiliar creature's left ear suddenly twitched, listening to Shield's scream. The stranger introduced herself. It was a certain Morel, who declared that she was a swordsman who deserved the title of Holy Sword in the country of beastmen, Arias. She watched his reaction from the roof. And at the end of her speech, she added that she was glad to meet him. Shield turned to her, watching her movements carefully, asking what he owed to her visit. Morel calmly replied that she had received intelligence information that Shield Reyares was expelled from his country. Morel jumped off the roof, heading towards the heroes. On the Queen's orders, she had come here in haste to receive Shield as an honored guest. This was the reason she had come to another country. The mage was very surprised by her wording honored guest. The beast woman offered to take Shield with her to her home country, Irias. Since this was the Queen's order, she admitted that she intended to take the mage even if she had to use force, but for now she was only politely asking him to come with her. Morel's offer made the magician abstract himself for a second and think about her offer more seriously, because he didn't care where to go if there was a stable job with good pay, but he had a bad feeling. After thinking over his answer, Shield confidently announced to the stranger that he was asking for forgiveness, but that he would no longer allow others to decide how he would live. This was his final answer. Morel warned that she would unfortunately have to take the famous wizard by force, so, taking the weapon from behind her back, she replied that in that case, when he woke up, he would already be in the land of the beastmen, Arias. The woman suddenly lunged at Shield with a heavy sword, jumping up to close the distance between them. The weapon appeared right in front of Reyares' eyes. He was startled for a moment, but was already ready to use the barrier magic. When she hit the mage's shield, Morel bounced back several meters, and her weapon was thrown away. She didn't have time to realize how the wizard had so quickly parried her attack. All confidence disappeared from her face. Shield was wary in his mind, since usually after his spell to destroy a weapon, it would break in half. But her sword was only thrown a little further along with her opponent. Morel admitted that his magic was quite interesting, but her sword was forged by the best blacksmith in the Beastman country, so breaking it would not be as easy as Shield expected. Then she pounced on Reyares again, attacking him with her bulky sword right at the buckle. But the mage calmly blocked this attack too, although sweat and some excitement appeared on his face. Shield's ability to use barrier magic, but she was not inferior to him in tenacity, continuing to use new attack tactics to finally reach his weak point and attack. This time, the woman disappeared. The former court magician, after thinking it over, decided to set up a magical barrier over a larger area to prevent the beast woman from attacking. The mage felt movement, but Morel's attack had not yet begun. He stood there, waiting for her to attack him. Very close, Shield felt the energy of a woman moving at lightning speed somewhere behind him. He successfully anticipated his opponent's attack by making a round shield, preventing her from attacking. The mage smiled arrogantly, rejoicing at his combat skills, honed to perfection. Another attack by the sorcerer barrier, physical reflection, threw the opponent back, but did not knock her off her feet. She was able to hold on without losing her balance. Shield continued to haughtily observe the behavior of his opponent. Morel, covered in bruises and clearly tired from the fight, was still on her feet. The mage looked at the woman in surprise, exclaiming what incredible endurance she had. The beast man spat blood onto the ground. The opponent easily guessed what the essence of this magical barrier was. The power of her own sword turned against her. Shield confirmed her words, her sword would hardly reach him in any case. The guy's calm suddenly turned into panic. With tears in his eyes, looking at the beaten Morel, he screamed, was she really ready to take him dead, when before that she declared that he was an honored guest? The clever rival answered him that if he could not defend himself, then he was not the one her country needed. Shield assessed her as reasonable, fair. He laughed, determining that in such a case the strongest should survive. With eyes full of rage and excitement, Morel declared that she still had the strength to continue fighting. She gripped her sword tighter and attacked the former court mage again. Her speed was astonishing. She was so fast that Reyarez could barely see her, and even though she had suffered a lot of injuries, her mobility was still not reduced. But until she could break the protective barrier, she would not win. No matter where Morel attacks from, how well trained she is, or how fast she moves, it is useless. None of her attacks will penetrate the mage's magical barrier. She persistently tries to break through the shield and delivers the final blow with her sword. Having struck the wizard's protective barrier with her sword, she was thrown back several meters again. Only now the injuries were even more significant, and Morel was unable to stay on her feet. Her opponent landed on the ground. Shield noted that her attack was quite good. The girl admitted that she had completely lost the fight. Her opponent was too strong. Even she, the Saint of the Sword, could not reach him, although she has enough strength and endurance to fight seriously with such a mage. Her last attack left her clothes badly torn. Shield was indignant, telling her that she needed to cover up. The magician gave her his cloak. Mirel, despite her defeat, was obliged to carry out her queen's order to bring Shield back with her. She must, at all costs, return the barrier magic to her home country of the Beastmen. Faye and Amelia, who were standing nearby, finally approached Shield. Apparently it was all over, the girls thought. The beast woman said that she would stay in the city for a few days to rest and find a way to recruit Reyarez. Shield is upset that he keeps getting into weird situations. He starts to feel like he's doing something bad. Faye and Amelia interrupted his thoughts, suggesting to go get something to eat. The magician was clearly tired after a protracted fight with the beast woman, who wanted to take him by force to her kingdom. Before the heroes had time to leave the street, Morel called out to Mr. Shield, stating that she wanted to ask him a rather personal question. The girl came very close to him, gently touching his chin with her hand, and allowed herself to ask him if he wanted to marry her. The barrier mage clearly did not expect to hear such a question from his opponent after the battle. Morel's question seemed strange not only to the magician, but also to his companions. The girls looked back at the beast woman with fury. The magician exclaimed at her question. Shield was frightened, jumping away from Morel as far as possible. It turns out that the beast girl's greatest dream is to marry a man beyond her sword's reach. She sincerely asks Reyarez to marry her and go together to the land of the beastmen, Urias. But the magician is horrified. He thought that their relationship was based only on the desire to kill each other. He refused Morel's offer to become her husband. For Shield, she loudly declares to everyone that the master belongs to her from the very beginning. She is more to his taste. Morel replies that she has a better chance of being liked by the magician. They decide to also ask Faye's opinion, addressing her as inhuman, asking if she also wants to stay close to Shield. Reyarez. The dragon found this question quite amusing. In response, Morel Faye calmly states that she would just like to eat him. Shield then guesses that she still hasn't given up on the idea after all this time. The dragon confesses that she actually has the ability to gain the power of those she absorbs. Sooner or later, the girl plans to eat him and take for herself the miraculous power of barrier magic, which she herself could not resist. The former court magician was slightly amused by Faye's answer. He was surprised that she had such plans for his life. Morel didn't like the girl's answer at all. She considered Faye's plan to eat the man who was supposed to become her husband unforgivable. Faye, seeing the indignation on Morel's face, began to justify herself by saying that she was in no way interfering with their marriage. The life of people is too short, the dragon states. Shield interrupts her, guessing her plans. The girl plans to eat him when he gets old and senile. Until then, she plans to remain just friends with him. In this case, Morel offers the Dragon Queen to be a witness at her and Shield's wedding. Faye agrees without the slightest hesitation. Only Shields and Amelia were not satisfied with this outcome. The magician was indignant that they were shaking hands, as if he had no right to decide his own fate. Amelia screamed that she would not give up her master. A voice came out of nowhere and said that it wanted to contribute to this funny story. A certain girl standing behind the heroes added that she had doubts when she heard about Shield's expulsion. Ryares from the kingdom of Helena. A beautiful lady appeared not far from the heroes. Faye immediately recognized her. She is a spatial movement mage. It is very rare to meet her. The girl introduced herself as Gabrielle Paralley. She is a representative of Minant, and has arrived to invite them to Minant. Shield noted to himself that it was as if he had heard something similar recently, as if he had experienced déjà vu. Without thinking, the magician announced to the girl that he was not going to go anywhere for some time. Shield's statement upset the spatial movement magician quite a bit. Gabrielle bowed, asked to forgive her, but said clearly and confidently that although she liked stubborn people, nevertheless, her mission was to take the magician with her. She only had time to say that she was very good at this mission, when she immediately disappeared into thin air, frightening all the heroes except the fairies. Suddenly, a woman's hand with long nails grabbed Shilda by the shoulder, trying to drag him along with her into the darkness. But Gabrielle, like everyone else, was confronted with a barrier in the form of a magical barrier that prevented her from touching the shield. She did not understand whether it was a wall or a reflection. She did not see any barrier in front of her at all. Gabrielle realized that she would not be able to take the famous and coveted former court magician with her just like that. Faye watched the actions of the spatial movement mage. Calmly, but as if warning, the girl said that something really big was brewing now. Gabrielle flew into the air. A huge hole in space appeared in the sky, and a giant's foot emerged from it, intending to crush the entire city. Shield stood there, confused, trying to figure out what to do next and where this woman came from. In front of Shield, resembling a man, but with fangs and legs. Gabrielle sat on his shoulder, smiling maliciously. She shouted at the mage that she would take him by force. In his hands, the creature held a stone club, preparing to attack. The giant did not fit on the narrow city street. It seemed that any step or wrong move of his would destroy the city into pieces. Gabrielle, sitting on the monster's shoulder, tried to do so as not to cause damage to the city, but she understood perfectly well that it would be difficult. Shield was outraged that the girl, having summoned a huge monster from a spatial hole, allowed herself to think and worry about the state of the city, fearing to harm the city's infrastructure or living people. However, the girl cleverly answers the magician that now that it has come to using power, some injuries remain inevitable. While simultaneously mocking Shield and enjoying her power, she asks the mage to simply not die during their battle. The giant crosses his arms and throws a punch straight at Ryares, sending dust flying around. He thinks that he has easily grabbed the powerful magician with his hands and tries not to unclasp the lock from his hands. Gabrielle, confident in her power, thinks that Shield won't be able to pull off such a blow. However, a moment later, she realizes that something is wrong. Shield, as if nothing had happened, climbs out from under the rubble and the giant's hands. He is unscathed, as a strong barrier has formed around him. He turns to the sorceress, saying that she scared him and asking again if she said anything. Gabrielle decides she should try another attack. Sweat is beading on her face. She is clearly tense. The giant disappears, and a huge lump of earth appears in the sky instead. The girl asks them to keep her company for a little while longer. She is going to throw this mountain right at the magician, hoping that it will destroy his magical barrier. Shield grins that the mountain used to be much bigger, but the girl tells him that it is stupid to believe only in what he sees in front of him. Everything that his eyes convey is only a part, the tip of an iceberg that will soon fall on him from the sky. A huge piece of land, more like a whole mountain, was moving straight towards the city, spilling some pieces of stones and earth onto the road. The former court mage, horrified and furious that Gabrielle, without thinking about the consequences, selflessly decided that she could afford to destroy an entire city, destroying houses and streets and possibly maiming people, shouts at her in rage. The sorceress only repeats that at this stage, some damage is inevitable. But S.H.I.E.L.D. does not consider this just some damage. This entire block can harm not only people, animals, and the entire city as a whole. Mirel decides to help the experienced and powerful S.H.I.E.L.D., stating that the spatial movement mage is forcing the girls to also take part in the battle for the city. Now this battle concerns not only Reyarez, but also the rest of the inhabitants. Faye calls these circumstances a burden, but bravely accepts the sorceress's challenge, preparing to use her dragon power. Only Amelia trembles with fear and horror, watching as her city is suddenly in danger. Gabriel looks at the girls. She urges S.H.I.E.L.D. to understand that Minant is in desperate straits and needs the help of a mage. The former drive mage tells her that this time he is not going to hold back his powers, but rather will release as much energy as needed to save the city. Reyarez warning. S.H.I.E.L.D. Gabriel ignores it completely and commands the stone above the city to fall using a spell. The boulder begins to fall rapidly, blocking the sun's light from the city. S.H.I.E.L.D. calmly prepares to use a barrier spell to stop the disaster. He stretches his hand out in front of him, and the reflections of the shield begin to appear in front of him. Gabrielle thought she had already defeated him, watching the mage stand still without taking any action, but she had not yet realized how wrong she was. Appeared above the mage completely destroyed the mountain, leaving no trace. Only a strong wind arose, scattering small fragments and leaves around the area. Gabrielle was furious and didn't understand why the guy could deal with her magic so easily. She was furious. The spatial movement sorceress panicked over the failed attack that S.H.I.E.L.D. had prevented. In that case, Gabrielle decided that she would need to teleport the most famous mage to Minant with her magic. Reyarez kept his cool. He assumed that the girl would want to drag him all the way to Minant, and already had a protective barrier magic spell ready to repel any attack from her. Ignoring S.H.I.E.L.D.'s words, Gabrielle still cast a spatial magic spell of forced teleportation, but the mage successfully repelled her magic with his magical barrier. Reyarez smirked arrogantly and told his beautiful rival that her plan would not work. The reflection of the forced teleportation spell destroyed the girl's clothes, but did not teleport her herself. S.H.I.E.L.D. was shocked by this outcome of events. He immediately turned away, looking at the other girls nearby, who were also standing behind him, surprised. Gabrielle said he deliberately reflected her magic to make her clothes disappear. S.H.I.E.L.D. screamed that that was absolutely not true. S.H.I.E.L.D. noticed that people passing by began to look at her strangely. He decided to give the girl his shirt on top so she could cover herself. The magician admitted his mistake and apologized. He should have used a different spell. The spatial teleportation mage told S.H.I.E.L.D. that he had to take responsibility for this and smiled sweetly at the hero. Then Morel began to resist Gabrielle's words. The beast woman declared that she was sorry, but she had long ago decided to make S.H.I.E.L.D. Reyarez as her husband, without taking into account the opinion of the magician himself. Gabrielle replied that it was obvious to her that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s preferred girls. She was sure that he was less attracted to aggressive women. But Morel stood her ground, insisting that she was no less a suitable candidate. Then both girls asked S.H.I.E.L.D. to decide which of them he would choose to settle the dispute. But Reyarez resisted their request. He replied that up to this point they had both tried to take him by force, and now he could not help but consider them enemies. Gabriel, Morel, and Amelia, not listening to the opinion of the magician, decided in this case to take S.H.I.E.L.D. for themselves. All three girls wanted to be close to the powerful magician. Faye decided to stop this spectacle, reminding that it seemed that the Margrave would soon bring high-ranking officials of the country. It would be better if they discussed everything there as representatives of their states. Everyone was happy with the idea. Gabriel and Morel exchanged glances, preparing to compete for the shield. Reyarez. Faye just screamed, warning everyone that she would end up eating him no matter what anyone decided. S.H.I.E.L.D. felt awkward, but wanted to say something about the girl's plans for his life. But a strange voice interrupted him, causing all 5 heroes to turn around and look at the forest. Reyarez turned and looked into the distance where the voice had told him to go. He saw something that filled him with complete horror, destroying something inside of him. The huge shield that S.H.I.E.L.D. erected in the country of Helena collapsed. All the heroes watched the explosion. The barrier that had prevented the dragon race from passing for 3 years had now been destroyed. Faye said it had happened faster than she had expected. Morel watched in delight as the protective barrier that served as the foundation for Helena's arrogant kingdom gradually disappeared. The protagonist looked into the distance in horror. Everything around him faded. A new era had begun. Hegemony would depend on where S.H.I.E.L.D. would end up. Reincarnation. The hero remembered to himself how long it lasted and was destroyed in one moment, but it was no longer his business. The heroes moved to Count Albert's palace. He would like to start a meeting to discuss the future of Helena's former court mage, S.H.I.E.L.D. Reincarnation. First of all, Albert presents the conditions of his state, Urai. The former court magician was more preoccupied with his thoughts. He looked out the window at the sky, where his great magical barrier used to be. With a sneer, he asks himself again, apparently now is the best time to think about the future. Count Albert began listing the conditions the country would guarantee if S.H.I.E.L.D. stayed with them. He would guarantee a lifetime position as a court mage, an annual salary 10 times higher than that of court mages in other countries, and what's more, they would grant him the title of Count and land. Albert's words struck the boy. He was ready to stay in the country of Ure. Morel asked for the opportunity to be the next one to continue the discussion. Urias, the beastwoman said, offers the former court magician the title of Duke and the corresponding lands. Their size is 1/10 of the entire country, which can be equated to the possessions of some king governing a small state. This proposal from Morel pleased the magician even more than the previous one. He exclaimed that he would stay in Irias, but he was interrupted by another girl. Gabrielle stood up solemnly, finally presenting Minant's terms. The country of the spatial travel mage offers S.H.I.E.L.D. Sama the title of Duke of the Land and even the Sea. The girl noted that it would be very interesting to develop the territories thanks to Riaraz's talent. S.H.I.E.L.D. agreed that he absolutely had to choose Minant over the other options. But the girl continued listing the conditions. If other countries give them S.H.I.E.L.D. Riaraz, they will hand over the country's territory to Ure and Irias Albert. And Morel are shocked by this proposal, not believing in the seriousness of the statement of the representative of Minant. The Count and the Beastwoman looked at each other, as if deciding which outcome would be most beneficial for both of them. They both began to convince S.H.I.E.L.D. that it would be better for him to choose the country of Minanta. The magician looked at the representatives of the countries in shock, listened to each one's proposal, and shouted at the ceiling. The action suddenly switched to Helena's kingdom. A scream was heard, why suddenly their eternal barrier was destroyed. Before the king, standing on one leg, is the captain of the Order of the Knights of Carasaris. Wayne claims to have arrived to see him. Carasaris in a rage, asking him where S.H.I.E.L.D. is, why he hasn't shown up yet, even though half a day has passed since the protective barrier was destroyed. The captain of the Knights Order tells the king that he has apparently been missing for about 3 weeks, and the search is going with difficulty. In order to reduce the burden on his subordinates, Casares offers to take charge of the entire search for Reincarnation. S.H.I.E.L.D. The king agrees. In such a crisis situation, only someone like Casares himself could voluntarily take on such responsibility. The captain declares that if anything happens, he will immediately report everything to the king himself. The king is genuinely concerned about why Elaine, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s future wife, hid such important information from him, why she is so calm when her future husband suddenly disappeared without a trace. Still sitting, bending on one knee before His Highness, the captain entrusts him that he will take care of this matter, he can rely on him. And so the king does, deciding that it is time for him to rest. His Highness releases Casares. In the office, the captain reads S.H.I.E.L.D.'s file. The captain sits in his office with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ex-girlfriend, Elaine. The captain slams the table and yells at the girl for suggesting such a stupid plan. The girl replies that it is too late, standing still not far from the captain. It never even occurred to her that the absolute barrier could collapse. The girl crossed her arms over her chest and continued to say that, besides, it was necessary so that she could marry the crown prince. In any case, Casares was also an accomplice, so he should not try to absolve himself of responsibility. The captain gets up from the table and starts yelling at the girl. It was she who promised him that when she married the crown prince and became queen, she would give him the title of prime minister for life. The girl furiously replies, "Is he really going to put all the blame on her?" Suddenly, unable to withstand the pressure, the girl began to cry, covering her face with her hands. She just wanted to be with her beloved prince. Casares cursed, sat back down at the table and began to think. He decided to hide the truth at all costs. To solve the problem, Casares suggested silencing those who witnessed the breakup with money. Elaine calmly agreed, letting the captain know that she understood. Casares is in charge of finding this man. Once the captain catches Shield, Riaras will not stand on ceremony with him. If torture is required, he will force him to restore the magical barrier. The captain of the knights looked into the darkness. He declared that as long as they had the barrier, they would find everyone safe. Elaine leaves the captain's office, saying goodbye and leaving this to him. Clenching his fist, he glanced angrily to the side and said out loud that now it was the turn of a certain assassin who would be sent after Shield. Shield will go. The young man laughs nervously. Despite the fact that Shield is interested in Minant's offer, he confidently informs everyone that he decides not to go anywhere. The hero says that he will find a high-paying job without unnecessary obligations. The others are perplexed. Gabrielle speaks boldly of the improbability of such a job existing. She warns the boy that countries hunting for the barrier's power may come after him. Shield agrees that there are no easy solutions for him anymore. The girl is ready to hand over to the hero the lands of Mirai, which are to the east of Mirai, which are to the east of Morant. He is perplexed and repeats that he refused. But Gabriel does not mean this. She asks Shield to make Mirai an autonomous territory that he will rule himself. The mage realizes that ruling an autonomous territory is almost like becoming a king. Gabriel confirms that these lands will be independent from their state. In exchange, the girl asks Shield to install a barrier in the cities located near the Dragon Forest. Morel and Count Albert assure the young man that his barrier magic will be useful to all countries. After all countries will feel safe. They believe that Shield's magic is too great to belong to just one country. They argue that just one barrier in the cities will significantly increase the level of defense of these states. Meryl praises Gabrielle for her idea. She thanks the fencer for her kind words. Shield likes the idea. He heard that Mirai is a land blessed with rich resources. Since the plan suits everyone, Gabriel says that they will follow the plan. Count Albert suggests opening a bottle of champagne and celebrating. The Count, Shield, Meryl, and Gabriel are delighted with today's decision and raise their glasses of champagne to it. According to the concluded agreement, the magician must first go to Irias, the country of beastmen in the north. Finally, he set up a barrier in the northernmost city of the state, Minante. Shield confidently finishes installing the barrier. Faye is very surprised, because she thought it would take more than one day. The young man replies that, overall, he could have finished the job in an hour, but that would have left a bad impression. Gabrielle is impressed by his magic. The girl thanks him. Shield wonders if he has the ability to move freely around the country. The young man wants to see the state before he reaches his own domain. Gabriel says he can give him a pass to cross the border. The girl gives Shield a bracelet. She says that it is made of a ruby magic stone. This decoration will certify the young man as the lord of the territory. The magician thanks the girl. Gabriel suggests that he show his gratitude by signing a marriage contract with her. Amelia and Marl also wonder about marriage. Amelia suggests that Shield stay and live as her husband. At the same time, Marl says that the question of whether he will become her husband remains open, even if he becomes the lord of the territory. Shield does not answer the girl's question and quickly leaves with Faye. Despite the girls asking them to stay, Shield and Faye leave anyway. When the heroes left, Gabrielle gave them money for the journey, about 10,000 gold coins. Faye doesn't know how much it costs in the human world, so she asks the boy. Shield explains that this money would be enough for a 10-day trip without problems. Faye does not understand why they have no money left after only 3 days of travel. The young man gets angry at this question. He indignantly hints that there is no money left because Faye ate for 10. Shield lowers his head and says that if this continues, they will starve to death before they reach their lands. The dragon girl, completely unperturbed, suggests that the hero start working. The mage asks if she is going to work too. Faye asks why she would want to. She enthusiastically tells him that she has no reason to work, because if Shield dies of hunger, she can just eat him. The young man is no longer surprised by this, because he knows that the dragon girl always perceives people as food. The hero, frowning slightly, thinks about how he could earn a stable income without revealing his identity. Only one place comes to mind. Faye worries that Shield might do something illegal, but the young man irritably assures her that he has no intention of doing anything of the sort. Before the heroes, Shield and Faye end up in the Adventurers Guild. The adventurers are having fun and don't even notice them. The dragon girl says that everyone here looks weak. The boy turns to her and says that it is impossible to speak loudly because someone might hear. The heroes are joyfully greeted by a friendly female administrator who asks if they have any tasks. Shield confidently and enthusiastically tells her that he wants to register as an adventurer and take on a quest. She sighs. At this time, Faye looks at her with disdain. The girl turns away with a smirk. Shield is angry, he is very indignant. The magician asks with displeasure if she thought he looked weak. The girl denies it and takes notes. The administrator asks if the young man has experience as an adventurer. He looks and speaks confidently, although he has no such experience. The girl asks if anyone can vouch for his abilities. The answer to this question is also negative. The girl happily tells Shield that he is now an E-rank adventurer. She congratulates him on this news. The administrator places a leaflet on the table. It shows a list of quests. They are the only ones available to the young man at the moment. Shield asks discontentedly if there are any quests to hunt strong monsters. The girl reminds the hero that he is an E-rank adventurer. The young man is very annoyed and indignantly says that he will not be able to make any money from this. The administrator again repeats in a friendly manner that the magician is an E-rank adventurer. Shield tries to contain himself and explains that he has a companion who eats for 10. There is a noise. A man's figure appears in the shadows. He asks if anyone needs help. The administrator looks at the stranger with admiration. Shield looks at him warily and asks him to introduce himself. The stranger looks very self-confident. He doesn't even have time to introduce himself before someone calls his name. His name is Aiza's-san. The girl tells Aiza's-san that Shield wants to take on more difficult tasks. The mage is still annoyed because he is sure that he can handle everything at his own risk. Aiza's-san looks at him uncertainly. The adventurer appears kind and friendly towards the newcomer Shield. He says that he is ready to show the mage the real world of high-ranking adventurers and invites him to follow him. The protagonist looks sad. Shield thought about how Aiza's-san himself, the best high-ranking adventurer, had personally gone to help the newcomer. This surprised the magician greatly. Aiza-san smiles and says contentedly that everything is fine and that this idea is a profitable investment. Shield, looking slightly tense and unsure, looks at the adventurer from the side and calls him a tall and handsome guy. Faye looks at the youth with disdain and tells him that it is not really an insult. Aiza's-san offers Shield to share the reward. He agrees and says that the adventurer is very generous. Although he has the thought that Aiza's-san is a fool, because there are only 2 of them. In front of the heroes lies an image of a formidable creature. The adventurer offers to take on the task of the turtle Jinga. Aiza's-san, Shield, and Faye enter a dungeon. The adventurer warns them to be careful, as there are many weak monsters living there. He explains that the turtle Jinga is an A-rank monster. Its shell is highly resistant to both physical and magical attacks. Aiza's-san explains that Jinga the turtle hides in its shell when it feels threatened, so it will be difficult to deal with. At this time, Faye eats something, and Shield is distracted by her and does not understand where she got the food from. The young man stands with his arms crossed and looks dissatisfied. He doesn't understand how to win if the turtle is constantly hiding in its shell. He thinks his magic won't work. Shield is mad as hell because to complete the mission, he must defeat a monster that is always hiding. And that is impossible. Aiza-san looks at the disgruntled mage. He says that Shield looks pale. The adventurer mockingly asks if Shield is going to retreat. The young man looks at him with bewilderment. The young men are chatting, but Faye is not listening to them at all. The magician says that he is not afraid at all, and that it will be easy to win. However, the young man does not look confident. The adventurer looks around and realizes that there are no monsters in sight here at all. Faye is a bit arrogant. She mockingly says that all this was expected. Shield asks what she meant, but Aiza-san replies that it doesn't matter. Aiza-san asks Shield and Faye which of the 2 of them is in the vanguard and which is in the rear guard. Shield and Faye look at each other with confusion. The young man looks very unsure and asks if they really need it. At this time, the dragon girl crosses her arms and looks at him with disdain. The adventurer looks disappointed, as he can't believe that the heroes have no experience at all. Aiza's-san explains that it's better to assign roles, as it makes it easier to adapt to different monsters in battle. Aiza's-san holds Shield's hands. He says that Shield doesn't need to worry about it because he is here, so today the boy just needs to focus on safety and protecting himself. The adventurer looks at the boy carefully and tells him to keep to himself and not to do anything reckless. Shield thinks that Aiza's-san is serious. It is quite possible that he could be a good guy. The adventurer notices the turtle. A turtle suddenly appears in front of the heroes. It is huge, has big teeth. This creature is furious and looks scary. Aiza's-san screams for the monster to be left to him. Shield tries to stop him and warn him not to attack thoughtlessly. The adventurer does not listen and rushes into battle. Aiza's-san is too confident in his own abilities to listen to the young man. He thinks he can defeat the turtle with one blow before it hides in its shell. The adventurer makes a blow. The turtle manages to hide in the shell, and Aiza's-san falls. There is not a scratch left on the monster. The adventurer is angry. He shouts that this is unfair and tries to lure the monster out. Shield understands that in this situation he will not be able to use the barrier. The mage watches the adventurer. He ponders the situation and realizes that Aiza's attack has lured out the turtle Jinga. But there is one problem. Shield notices that Aiza's sword is already beginning to crack. If the adventurer continues like this, the sword will simply break before they can even penetrate the shell. However, Aiza's does not notice this and continues to attack. The magician puts up a physical barrier. Aiza's shouts for Shield and Faye to stay back. The young man himself understands that even if they wanted to, they would still be unable to do anything. He thinks and realizes that the adventurer's attacks are weak and useless. The mage watches the fight closely. He wonders if the sword's edge will be more powerful if he strengthens it with a barrier. Shield tries to strengthen the sword with a barrier, and it works. The adventurer's attacks become slightly stronger. Aiza's realized that he had become stronger and began to attack. He attacks again, but something strange happens. The turtle rushes at full speed towards the heroes. Shield decides to put a barrier on Aiza's before it's too late. The monster rushes towards the adventurer. Aiza's prepares for the blow and covers his head. He is thrown back with a strong blow. The turtle was too fast. Shield did not have time to completely cover Aiza's with a barrier. Fortunately, the adventurer remained alive. Now the magician faced the question, what to do with the turtle Jinga. Aiza's is confused. He doesn't understand how it happened that he was barely able to block the monster. The adventurer is extremely angry. He is sure that the rank of this monster is incorrect. The turtle is an S-rank monster, not an A-rank. The creature is still actively attacking Aiza's, but he is already at his limit. Shield calls out to the adventurer and asks him to step back. Aiza's turns to the young man, his whole appearance expressing displeasure. The adventurer is furious that the magician did not listen to him and did not stay away from the monster. Aiza's looks around and sees that the turtle has become even faster. Moreover, the monster has become even more embittered. He is rushing straight at Shield. The young man is afraid that he won't make it in time. Aiza's screamed. Some liquid splashed on him. The adventurer cannot believe that the monster has been defeated and the barrier has fallen. There is a fallen turtle lying on the ground. Aiza's sees the head of the turtle Jinga and can't believe it. The adventurer tells Shield that even if the plan wasn't clear after reading it, it's time to get down to business. The young man considers Aiza's to be an incredibly problematic guy. The adventurer screams furiously, asking Shield what he did. He does not understand how the magician did it. However, the young man explains, completely calmly and unperturbed, that he put up a barrier. Aiza's indignantly and loudly asks the young man, did he really stop the turtle Jinga with such primitive magic? Shield agrees and says that it happened. While they argue, Faye goes to the monster. The girl says she wants to try a piece of the shell. The young men are surprised and ask if she can chew it at all. Faye actually takes a bite. Isaac still can't believe what she's doing, and Shield sadly says he could sell the shell parts for a profit. Suddenly, something happens to the girl's wings. Her wings change their appearance. Faye says that it is enough to fill them with magic, and they become incredibly hard. Shield says that it looks ridiculous, and it's better to hide them anyway. The girl decides that she will put them away and take them out only when necessary. The young man decides to take and sell the rest of the turtle shell. He calls out to Isaac but receives no answer. Faye notices that the adventurer has passed out. Shield sighs and realizes that the problems are only getting bigger. The young man sells the shell parts and gets enough money to travel for some time. Aiza's looks at Shield and still can't believe that this man is the most legendary Shield. The magician asks if he can really keep the entire amount. The adventurer agrees, noting that the young man did all the work and Aiza's himself did nothing. Shield calls Aizaz to go with them to Mirai because they could use a man like him. Aizaz refuses, calling himself the best adventurer in this city. The young man says goodbye, hopes that he will be able to meet this adventurer again, and wishes him good luck. Faye noted that Aizaz remained a good man until the very end. As a token of gratitude, they even left him a small gift. Shield and Faye finally arrived in the city. The girl is indignant and says that they returned to the city literally on the verge of starvation. She is unhappy that the money is disappearing too quickly. The young man also replies with displeasure that it is because of her, because Faye takes them to expensive places. Faye notices that the town is too empty. Suddenly, the locals open the door of the building and shout hopefully, waiting for the priest. The people are disappointed that it is not him. One of the men sighs and says that he can no longer wait for the priest to come. This irritates him. Shield says he's not a priest, but he can help. But he thinks that if he can sort out their problem, maybe they'll get something to eat. Perhaps the city is cursed. The townsman is dejected and says that people continue to get sick. Now the young man understands why people are waiting for the priest. He is sure that since he is not there, he will be able to deal with it himself. Faye calmly says that barriers cannot stop the curse. Shield is outraged. He tells her that there is no other way. The young man explains to the girl that if everything goes on like this and they do not get food, he will die of hunger. The girl happily says that everything suits her, because if he is gone, she will simply eat him. The magician is angry and indignant. The townspeople watch them and wonder whether they should trust these two with such a serious matter. After thinking for a while, the people finally agree. Shield questioningly. She thinks about how they are leaving the city so eagerly without having a clear plan. She also says that they are not even sure if it is a curse. The magician asks the girl if she knows anything about this. Faye knows nothing about this. However, she says that the curse is too weak because it cannot even kill a person. The girl freezes. She feels a familiar smell in this place. Shield looks at her in surprise. Faye can't remember the smell. The boy notes that, despite the fact that many years have passed, the girl still recognized it. The heroes arrived at the right place. Shield senses a powerful magical energy. Suddenly he screams. Faye and Shield look at the lake. It has turned red. The girl notices someone, but the magician does not understand what she is talking about. The heroes see a demon in the lake, bound in chains. His name is Azazel. During the war between gods and humans, he was Faye's right hand. Shield assumes that this demon is incredibly powerful, since he held such a position. The girl decides to remove the curse, but this frightens the young man. The chains are broken, and Azazel is freed. Faye tells Shield that she has figured out the nature of the curse. She believes that demon magic has leaked through a crack in the seal and infected the townspeople. The boy is terrified by this idea, as it is even worse than their original mission. At this time, Azazel rises. Azazel rises and immediately bows down to Faye, kneeling. He has not seen his mistress for 300 years. The girl looks happy and says that the demon is still as formal as before. Azazel asks his mistress for forgiveness. In his defense, he says that people have imprisoned him in a seal. He is ready to accept any punishment. Faye gently and slowly places her hand on his head and says that there is no need for punishment. Azazel appreciates her kindness. Suddenly, the demon's eyes darken and become completely black. He angrily asks why there is a human next to her. Shield is scared. Azazel approaches the young man and asks for permission to destroy him. The magician quickly retreats back. Faye looks back at her subordinate and tells him that the war with the humans is long over. The gods have lost. Azazel is sure that, in this case, it is necessary to start a new one. In order to declare war on people, as a first step, the demon is ready to take Shield's head. The demon announces that he has become stronger than before. Faye looks at him with apprehension and wants to say something. Azazel and Shield stand opposite each other. They both look confident. The demon looks completely unperturbed, and the young man seems ready to fight. Azazel is ready to use the magic of corruption. During his 300 years of imprisonment, the demon has developed a new spell, and he has already used it. He believes that even a human hero cannot stand against him. Azazel looks smug and confident. Faye is amazed by such a development of her subject, because people will not be able to analyze this spell, much less find an antidote. Faye and Azazel stand with their backs to each other. The girl is very happy with this news. She says that if that hero appears again, then the demon interrupts her and adds that he will destroy him for the sake of his mistress, and then she will be able to rule the people. Shield is perplexed. He asks the girl if they are talking about the same war between gods and humans that happened 300 years ago. Faye, crossing her arms, looks at him thoughtfully. With her head down, Faye tells the demon that she cannot allow this war to happen because there are creatures in this world now that are much more terrible than heroes. Azazel looks back at his mistress and doesn't understand if they can't defeat them even with his corruption magic and Faye's power. Faye denies it, but suggests the demon check it out. He looks at her incredulously. Azazel's appearance shows that he is ready for battle. He asks where he can find such a powerful opponent. She hints at Shield. Then Faye points to the boy. He lets out a surprised cry, not expecting the girl to suggest him. Shield with disdain and contempt, and asks if he is that guy. The girl smirks and says that if Azazel can defeat him, then perhaps she will reconsider the war with humans. Rubbing his wrist, the demon asks if his task is to simply destroy the boy. Faye confirms, but emphasizes the possibility of doing so. Shield is very indignant. He begins to shout at the girl, but he is interrupted. Azazel directs his corruption magic at the boy. Shield prepares to repel the attack. A bright flash appears, blinding everyone present. Faye breathes a sigh of relief, smiles, and says that everything around is decomposing. Azazel continues his attack. The girl stands behind him with her arms crossed. The strong wind and light do not stop, even become stronger. The demon turns to his mistress and smugly tells her that defeating the mage was easy. Faye looks at him with a smirk and tells him not to get cocky. Azazel looks at her with confusion and asks why. The impact left a crater on the ground. The magician slowly but surely climbs out of it. He says it was scary. Azazel has not yet regained his full strength. He is furious and ready to attack the boy directly. The demon uses different magic. Everything around is destroyed. Dust appears before your eyes, and you can no longer see anything at all. The demon is overly confident and smug. He thinks that this time, Shield is definitely finished. Rubbing his hands, he thinks about how to start the invasion, but suddenly he notices something. Despite a series of powerful blows, the mage returns and mockingly asks Azazel for a chance to rest a little. The demon does not want to retreat. He prepares to fight the mage face to face. Azazel expresses disgust towards humans, admitting that he does not want to touch them because he considers them dirty. The demon suddenly disappears, leaving behind only dust. Shield looks around, but can't find him. The young man is confused, because he has never encountered the magic of corruption. He has no idea how to resist it. He looks around, but does not even feel the presence of Azazel, as if the demon has become a ghost. Smiling evilly, Azazel calls out to Shield, saying that he caught him. Azazel appears right in front of the mage's face. The demon smirks while the young man looks at him with disdain. Shield wonders if he will be crushed. He does not understand. Is there really no way to deal with such powerful magic? Something is also happening in the kingdom of Helena. A cancellation of the order is heard from the palace. The king calmly says that the captain of the knightly order will take care of everything. Suddenly, a girl comes in. She is the royal magician. The ruler does not understand why she is in the hall. An additional story is told about the girl's departure. This girl's name is Olivier Arcana. The king is angry at her appearance. He angrily shouts that he does not remember granting her an audience. She does not answer him, which makes the king even angrier. Olivier doesn't understand why. Instead of investigating the reasons for Shield's disappearance, they are just trying to find him. The king disagrees with her completely. He believes that when Shield is found, the reason will be clear. The ruler is furious. He indignantly asks the girl if she is going to conduct an investigation. Olivier agrees. She is serious and confident. The king is so angry that he starts shouting. He says that he is tired of this and orders the magician to leave. She does not answer right away, which makes the ruler even angrier. He does not understand why she is silent. Olivier approaches the throne and leans one arm on the throne. She leans toward the king and tells him that even with her high regard as a court magician, Shield Rearez had a unique talent. However, the ruler does not understand what she is talking about. The girl tells the king that Shield himself said nothing, so she too has remained silent for 3 years. However, she believes that the work he did was unfairly assessed. The king is completely angry. He thinks that Olivier is blaming him for this. The girl moves away and mockingly tells him that if he heard it that way, then that's how it is. The king calls her impudent, and the girl leaves. Olivier notices 2 other girls. The court magician overhears their conversation. One of the girls says that when the engagement was announced, she hid her feelings and cried at night. She never wants to go through that again and is not going to lie to herself anymore. The king is still angry. He does not understand what Olivier is saying. The girl announces that she is not going to go down with this sinking ship. She announces that she will resign her powers as court magician today and go in search of S.H.I.E.L.D. The king cries out. He did not expect this. Olivier is already leaving, but the ruler calls out to her and asks if she knows where S.H.I.E.L.D. is. The girl says that once she started looking, she quickly found out the truth. She tells the king that maybe he should also find out about it and what stupid things his subordinates did. The king looks at her with incomprehension. He does not understand what her words mean. Olivier meets a townswoman and asks her to stay. She shows something to the woman and tells her that S.H.I.E.L.D. Riaras was supposed to arrive in this city. The resident replies that she thinks she has heard this name somewhere. The woman does not have time to finish speaking, as someone interrupts her. Suddenly, Amelia appears out of nowhere, screaming. She asks what Olivier said. Did she say S.H.I.E.L.D.'s name? The count tries to stop her. Olivier shows Amelia's drawing and says that S.H.I.E.L.D. looks like the handsome guy in the picture. The package depicts a dark-haired man with a fit and muscular figure. The count also looks at the drawing and says that the man depicted in it is definitely not S.H.I.E.L.D. Amelia emotionally exclaims that this young man is definitely S.H.I.E.L.D. The girl is delighted with the drawing. Amelia says with a smile that if it is about S.H.I.E.L.D.-sama, then he probably went north. Olivier interrupts the girl and Amelia gets angry. Amelia tells Olivier that she could listen to the end. The court magician interrupts the girl again, saying that she will follow her future husband. Then she realizes that she said it out loud and disappears. Amelia looks after her questioningly and displeasedly. Amelia is furious. She is angry and wonders who this girl was. The count assumes that she is very strong, as she uses teleportation. Meanwhile, Olivier asks other people, and even Beastmen, if they have seen S.H.I.E.L.D. She met Meryl and Gabrielle. However, the girls did not say anything. Olivier is in despair. Laughter can be heard. Meanwhile, Aizaz is fighting monsters again. Now, a huge, terrifying monster with large horns and claws stands before him. The adventurer guesses that it is an A-rank monster, which he will have a hard time defeating for now. Aizaz is serious. He realizes that even the life shield saved is likely to end now. The monster attacks Aizaz. The hero covers himself with a shield. Suddenly, a girl appears. She attacks the monster and quite successfully. This girl is Olivier. She saves the adventurer. Aizaz looks at her with relief and thanks her. Olivier shows a drawing of a man and asks if Isaac knows the man. She grabs him by the clothes and asks again if he said the name, S.H.I.E.L.D. The adventurer tells her that the image of S.H.I.E.L.D. is slightly different from how he looks in real life, but he assumes that it is still him. The girl persistently asks where the young man is now. Aizaz tells her that S.H.I.E.L.D. went to Lord Marai's residence. Olivier falls to his knees, disappointed and tired. The adventurer asks if everything is okay. The girl bursts into tears. She replies that she has already been to Eigen, Irias, and Maranta. However, there is no result. The adventurer offers the girl something to eat first, promising to treat her. The girl gradually begins to calm down. The heroes leave. Aizaz asks what Olivier wants. The girl answers that it is S.H.I.E.L.D. But the adventurer asked about food. The girl still has a long way to go to find S.H.I.E.L.D. Her solo journey continues for now. S.H.I.E.L.D. looks scared. It is unknown how he can cope with this magic. The boy uses a barrier to reflect magic. Azazel is incredibly angry. He doesn't understand what's happening. There is a fight going on. The demon is confused. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s magic pushes Azazel back. The demon holds his shoulder. He is furious and does not understand how this happened. It is a normal barrier spell. Then why is it so powerful? Faye asks with a smirk about whether she did not tell him. S.H.I.E.L.D. firmly sets his feet on the ground. He says smugly and confidently that analysis will not change the situation. The young man rushes into the attack again. Azazel is furious. He is not ready to retreat. The demon is sure that he will destroy the magician before he has time to realize anything. Azazel uses decoy magic. The demon attacks and runs into the barrier. Azazel looks at his hand in confusion. S.H.I.E.L.D. mockingly calls out to the demon and suggests that he take better care of himself and also look at the arm he lost. Azazel wants to stop. He calls out to Faye. The demon furiously shouts that this wound will heal in a week. S.H.I.E.L.D. is shocked that the demon's arm and wings will heal in a week. He calls it more impressive than his barrier. Azazel is still surprised. He asks if all humans have mastered this kind of magic. Faye replies that as far as she knows, only one has. She points to Shield. However, Azazel does not understand his mistress's intentions. The demon looks at Faye and asks about the takeover of humanity. He wonders if it will only begin after Shield's death, which would be in about 10 years. His mistress seems pleased and says that he is catching on quickly. The mage thinks that if Faye absorbs his barrier magic after his death, then humanity will be doomed, and in 100 years the world will become simply unrecognizable. The girl looks happy. She orders the demon to go to the world of Mirai for 100 years, to train and rest. Azazel bows to her and tells her that he has some things to finish before heading there. He turns around and snaps his fingers. Suddenly, many bats appear. Shield is delighted. The demon dissolves into a flock of these creatures. The mage is delighted, calling the demon incredible. Faye also calls him very smart, because the bats could be useful to them. The young man fearfully asks if the girl wants to make them allies, because they are very creepy. Azazel reappears and says that these creatures can be useful allies. Faye explains that it's not just their fighting prowess, but their true power, overwhelming influence. The demon says that bats subjugate both allies and enemies through fear. Such is their nature. Shield asks Faye if she is talking about the total number. Does she include traitors? He thinks it is impossible. However, the girl is smug. The girl looks at the boy haughtily and says that if they swear allegiance, then they do not betray. She asks if he is sure of his barrier. The boy confirms his confidence. Faye decides to report and get her reward. Shield asks her to wait. He doesn't have time because she's walking too fast. Mirai can probably be seen ahead. Shield stretches tiredly and says that getting to the city was a nightmare. He was even suspected of conspiring with Azazel and demanded proof, but fortunately, everything worked out well and the heroes are almost there. The young man says that it is, in principle, a real miracle that they got here alive. Faye does not listen to him at all. She thinks only about food, because she has already eaten her fill. Shield looks at her with displeasure. The heroes see Mirai. The young man is delighted, because the city turned out to be much more impressive than he expected. The city is really huge. Shield still can't believe that all this land now belongs to him. In front of them is a huge palace, which is probably his estate. The young man sees the knight and shows him the bracelet that Gabrielle gave him. He introduces himself and says that he is now the new lord, Sheld Reares. The mage returns to Faye and asks if he looked cool. However, the girl looks at him with displeasure and disagrees. The knights bow to him and say that they have been waiting for him. They ask for their new lord to pass. Shield looks incredibly happy and asks Faye what she thinks. Will they send a golden carriage to meet them at the gate? The girl looks doubtful. The heroes pass by, and all the people nearby turn around and look closely at the strangers. All the subjects are busy with yard work, cleaning, trimming bushes, and the like. One of the subjects meets Shield and Faye and asks them to come with him. He says that the new lord is already expected. The heroes follow the young man, looking around the palace. The subject constantly looks back at them. He asks Shield and Faye to wait and leaves. The girl assumes that they are not very welcome here. The lord agrees with her, because he feels the cold gaze of the people. Behind them, two maids whisper. Faye is as unperturbed as ever. She says that if they are not accepted, then the subjects can simply be eliminated. Shield no longer looks at her in surprise, only says that this is very encouraging. The young man does not understand who they are waiting for. Suddenly the door opens. 3 people appear. One of them, who walks first, looks arrogant and smug. He holds a staff in his hands. Behind him walk 2 more. One looks menacing, and the other is more friendly. A man with a staff greets them. He calls them representatives of the kingdom of Helena. He introduces himself. His name is Van Gogh. He learned everything from Lord Gabriel. When Van Gogh called the heroes representatives of the kingdom of Helena, Shield chuckled. The man says that since the previous lord entrusted him with the management of these lands, he is responsible for them. Van Gogh looks at the young man very arrogantly. He heard that the new lord comes from the common people. Pointing his staff at Shield, the man says that it will be better for both sides if they continue to live as before. Faye hesitantly asks the young man if they should tell Gabriel about this. However, the magician is confident that he can regain real power with his own hands. Shield asks Van Gogh if he is offering the boy to be a nominal lord while all real power remains with him. Van Gogh looks at the magician arrogantly, with a smirk, and says that the young man can interpret this as he wants. Shield is very self-confident. He understands that all this can drag on. Suddenly, Azazel appears. He is not alone. Van Gogh cries out in surprise. The demon announces that he has freed their sealed companions. He asks his mistress for permission to serve under Lord Shield for 10 years. Faye gives her permission. Azazel obediently kisses her hand. Van Gogh is furious. He screams and does not understand who dared to commit such impudence in front of Van Gogh himself. Azazel begins to cast a spell. The demon looks angrily at one of Van Gogh's subjects and says that he is in his way. The man is terribly frightened, but Van Gogh only starts yelling at him even harder. His subject's fear gets out of control, and he falls to his knees. His master, screaming, calls him pathetic. One of Azazel's subordinates calls out to him. She says that she will eliminate the unclean. The demon gives her his permission. The subordinate stands with a sword. The man kneels before her. He begs for mercy in tears. She tells him that leaving tails behind causes problems later. But then she decides that without a head, the man will not remember anything else. She swings her sword. Van Gogh looks at him. He looks a little scared. Van Gogh is furious. He threatens the army and is told to shut up. Suddenly, Azazel intervenes. The demon attacks Van Gogh, throwing him into the distance with his blow. Shield clearly doesn't like what's happening. He says it will turn into a rule by fear. The demon bows down to the boy, calling him his lord. Azazel explains that demons are sensitive to bloodlust. He believes that there is no place for those who do not know their place here either. Shield agrees, but not entirely. The demon asks his subject, Beluga, what about the other hostile insects in these lands? She replies that she has already dealt with them. Beluga allows those who do not feel hostility towards the new lord to enter. There are only 5 of them. Shield screams in anger, asking why only 5, and did they really destroy the rest? 5 people with their hands tied are kneeling in front of the young man, 2 guards at the gate, 1 cook, 1 new servant, and some girl. Shield addresses them. He tells them to work as before, and he will double their wages. The young man orders that everything that happened today must remain a secret. People are scared. They look at each other. Both guards, the cook and the maid, promise not to tell anything and thank the new lord. Shield smiles smugly. Only the 5th person, another girl, stares at the young man with intense and furious eyes. She does not look like an ordinary maid. Shield frowns and stares at her as well, wondering who this mysterious stranger is hiding in the shadows. Shield, Faye, Azazel, and Beluga look at the tied people. The newly minted lord is very interested in the identity of this mysterious girl. Shield notices that her hands are shaking. The young man looks at her closely and assumes that she is the heir of the previous lord. He thinks that Van Gogh kept her in captivity. The girl starts screaming and demanding that her hands be untied. As soon as her hands were freed, she tried to run. Everyone saw the wound on her. Shield wonders what kind of wound it is and if she has any more. The girl still couldn't escape. Beluga grabbed her. She keeps screaming to be let go. The girl's entire back is covered in terrible wounds and abrasions. She cries and screams for them not to look at her. At this time, the young man thinks about what could have happened to this poor child. She is in despair, crying and screaming, asking if he hasn't humiliated her enough. If she is locked up again, she would rather die than suffer again. Beluga asks if Shield wants her to take care of the girl, but the boy says it is his fault for not being sensitive. Looking at the girl, he thinks about how cruel the world was to this child, if she thinks death is salvation. The young man orders that the girl be given medicine and taken care of. She is surprised by this attitude and does not understand the reason. Shield doesn't understand her surprise, because he's sure that anyone in his place would have done the same. However, she thinks that he kills and enslaves people. The young man replies that he does nothing of the sort. He extends his hand to her and offers to start over. The girl hesitantly extends her hand to him and asks for forgiveness. She admits that she should have thanked the Lord first. She introduces herself. Her name is Lumiere Mirai. Now she thanks him for saving her. Shield thinks that aristocrats remain aristocrats. The girl says that she understands that Shield is not like Van Gogh, but Lumiere confidently declares that she will not allow the demons to take over these lands. She explains that Mirai is the city to which her father dedicated his entire life. With tears in her eyes, the girl says that she will protect her loved ones. Shield recalls his childhood. Little Shield puts a barrier around the bird's nest, protecting it. Now everything is fine. The young mage is called out by an old man, who says that the boy is using strange magic. Shield does not understand what the old man means. The man explains that he has seen many different spells in his life, but the boy's magic is unlike any of them. Shield is surprised because it is simply barrier magic. While they are talking, a snake quietly attacks the bird's nest. The barrier created by the magician protects it. The man still doesn't understand the boy. After all, there are many cool attack spells, and the boy strives to master this power. The boy asks why the old man doesn't understand him. Shield then explains that this magic contains the power to protect what is most dear to him. Returning to reality, Shield tells the girl that he understands her and assumes that she too has something to protect. Lumiere is confused. The Lord says he will teach her magic. He offers her to become stronger and take the city from him. The girl looks at him with incomprehension. With a slight smirk, Shield says that he only teaches barrier magic. Lumiere gets angry and shouts that such magic is not enough. She is interrupted by Beluga, who covers her mouth and takes her away. Shield smiles nervously, hoping that she will be of use to them. Meanwhile, Lumiere tries to break free from Beluga's grasp and screams to be let go. Beluga tells the girl to be quiet and takes her away anyway. Azazel looks thoughtfully at the new lord. The youth turns to the demon and asks him for advice on what to do next. Azazel bows slightly and suggests that Shield should wisely manage the legacy left by the previous lord. The young man thinks about it. The heroes set off to explore the city. Shield, Faye, Azazel, and the other creatures study the city. It now becomes clear to them why the city's development was so slow. If the dams had not been built, the city would suffer from devastating floods after every rainstorm. A proposal was made to begin by strengthening the water system. Shield sees debris from the dam on the ground. He suggests that flood control work was abandoned due to the huge financial costs. He says with dissatisfaction that if this continues, it will lead to constant recovery from natural disasters. Shield believes that the fate of the common peasants did not particularly concern the previous lord. Shield and his entourage. Someone from the crowd asks with a grin if this man's name is Shield. Reyarez, herself. The disgruntled man in the crowd is the city's ruler. The rest of the people don't understand why the new lord is collaborating with demons. Beluga agrees and tells Shield that if he comes with so many demons, people will start to be afraid. The young man asks all the accompanying people to step aside. The young man is friendly. He apologizes and says he didn't mean to seem arrogant. However, the crowd shouts that he shouldn't lie so brazenly. Shield announces that they have not come here to fight, but to work on strengthening the flood defenses. The city manager starts to get nervous and wonders if they are really going to work on strengthening the flood protection system. He realizes that if they do, they won't be able to collect excessive taxes under this pretext. The man asks if the others believe this. Suddenly, Beluga attacks him and cuts off his head. The people are scared. Another man shouts that she does not dare to touch his older brother. Beluga says that those who have something to say should come forward. Shield looks at the scene and thinks that no matter how many times he has seen her, he knows that her power is truly terrifying. He would not want to fight her. The peasants are terribly frightened. Some are screaming, others are crying. Shield scolds Beluga. He won't allow him to rule through fear, because that's not what he wants. He decides it's better to show than just explain. The magician is asked what he means. The young man begins to cast a spell. The peasants are surprised. Shield continues to build his barrier. Before people have time to say anything, the magician begins to explain that this barrier will last for 3 years. The man starts asking about the barrier. He says it's just a transparent barrier, and it's too thin. Other people tell him to shut up, or he might lose his head too. Shield assures the peasants that everything is fine. He invites the villagers to try him out for themselves. The people look at their new lord in surprise. The townspeople gather together. The start of the tournament to destroy the lord's barrier is announced. The rules of the test are simple. The winner is the one who can cause the most damage to the barrier built by the lord himself. Shield watches the events with interest. The winner is promised a special prize. The one who passes the test best will receive a specially crafted set of equipment enchanted with the lord's barrier magic. The winner will also receive a place in the regular army and excellent benefits. The villagers are whispering and discussing the rumor that the new lord only uses barrier magic. People are discussing how some barrier magic is given so much importance. Despite the tournament starting, there is still some discussion among the people. One of the villagers says that this is not just some barrier magic, because it surrounded the kingdom of Helena. Another villager thinks that this magic is fake. The host asks for silence. The peasants are asked to attack as much as they want within 10 minutes. The tournament is declared open. With excitement, people begin to attack the barrier in various ways, with weapons and hand-to-hand. Even the most famous adventurers of the city take part in the test. The townspeople are sure that it will be very easy to destroy such a barrier. While people are struggling to win, Shield just watches everything happening with a smirk. The participants look at the barrier and cannot believe that there is not a single scratch on it. The spectators cheer them on and shout that there is still plenty of time. However, there are only 5 seconds left. As the countdown continues, people are still trying to break the barrier. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the end of the test is coming. The participants were very tired, but nothing had changed, and the barrier remained as perfect as before. People are suggesting that there may not be a winner in this tournament. The host invites Lord Shield to announce the verdict. The magician approaches the barrier, places his hand on it and tests it to announce the results. Shield has identified the most effective attack. The host is ready to announce the results. The winner is... Number 24 is declared the winner. The magician applauds him and congratulates him. Beluga doesn't understand what the point of a tournament is if no one gets injured. Shield explains that the test was conducted to determine the abilities of the inhabitants. He tells Beluga that, in any case, recruitment will begin soon, and then the goal will be achieved. The Lord says that comrades should help each other, but Beluga is somehow confused by this word. The demoness tells Shield that she thought he was useless and incapable of anything. However, she changed her mind. The magician wondered what kind of impression he was making. Beluga says that maybe she wasn't lying when she said she thought about it a little. The Lord heard this and asked what she said, but she said nothing. Suddenly, one of the demons appears and says that there are guests in the mansion. Shield asks again because he is confused. The Lord does not understand why Gabrielle came here. The demon whispers something in the young man's ear. The Lord listens attentively. After listening to the subject, Shield says that trouble will begin. The maids greet their lord and ask him to pass. Faye follows him. The girl asks Shield if he has any idea who the visitor is. They say that this person is strong, so the magician assumes that it could be Olivier. The same visitor who is called the strongest court magician. The heroes prepare to enter and see Olivier. They open the doors and expect to see a girl. However, they notice that it is not her. There is a man standing in the hall, Mr. Gaimag. Shield nervously asks what he's doing here, but Faye is completely unperturbed again. She admits that she expected to see some nice girl, but here is a bald man. Gaimag haughtily replies that he would like to know that too. He is arrogant. The man says that such a great magician as he is not worth bothering with such a trifle as delivering the shield. The young man asks the magician again. Gaimag replies that this order was given by that same politically skilled captain of the knights. The young man does not understand why all this is happening if he was expelled. The court magician says that he knows nothing, and personally, even without the barrier in the country of Helena, he doesn't care. He assumes that the top brass has a different opinion and they need this barrier. Shield ponders this situation. He believes that only the king will be able to contradict the captain of the knights. The young man thinks that the king probably wasn't even involved in his expulsion. The Lord tells Gaimage that although he does not know everything, he does not intend to return to Helena. He warns the mage that if the mage tries to take him by force, he will not spare him. The court magician was only amused by this. With a grin, he asked Shield if the young man was serious about fighting him. The Gaimage still mocks the Lord. He smirks at the fact that the boy only knows how to put up barriers. The mage is ordered to bring Shield alive. The magician begins a witch fight. He claims that Shield doesn't even know what real magic is. The young man is blinded by the bright light and cannot open his eyes. He understands that even his barrier cannot protect him from such light. Shield tries to compose himself. It's just light. He realizes that his barrier magic won't work because it's not an attack, and barrier magic isn't just a reflection. Gaimage attacks again. Lord uses barrier to detect magic. He notices which direction the attack is coming from. The barrier was so strong that the court magician was simply thrown to the other side. There's dust all around, but I finally managed to see something. However, now it turns out that it's not the barrier after all. Gaimage asks Faye if she did it. The girl replies that it would be stupid to sit and watch. Besides, she is hungry. Shield lowers her head sadly. Lord is upset. He understands that for Faye it was just trash. But it was cool. The gay mage is still literally imprinted into the wall. Shield asks her if the mage is okay and if he is even alive. The mage begins to move his hands, and now the Lord is convinced that the gay mage is alive. Gaymag is furious. He shouts that this won't be the end of it. There are many who want to get to Shield. The magician tries to intimidate the young man and says that he himself is a cutie compared to the others. Shield thinks that means that Olivier will soon appear. The Lord begins to reason and understands that if the one who is called the strongest court magician comes, then his barriers will be tight, so it is time to strengthen the troops. While Shield tries to come up with a solution, Faye is ready to eat the magician. Azazel enters the hall. He has a lot of food in his hands. However, he is distracted by the appearance of the room. Following the attack, the demon notices that it was Faye's doing. However, Faye has no time for that. She takes the food from her subject so that she can eat faster. The demon looks at the defeated man and asks if he is an enemy. This is confirmed. Azazel wants to collect all the trash, but Shield distracts him and talks about the need to speed up the reinforcement of the troops. The demon says that the recruitment for the regular army is just ending. He asks the Lord to entrust this to him. People are gathering in front of the mansion. A self-confident demoness with a sword appears on the field. She joyfully and mockingly informs someone about the loss. Those around her look at her and realize that this is the very same milady. Some people are discussing a rumor that there is a recruitment for the army, and now there is a fight for the post of captain of the night squad. The final duel is just beginning. Others are talking about a demoness. This is Caprice, that very strongest duelist of the demons. There is one more person left. She looks at him with excitement and asks his name. This man's name is Oliver. The demoness notices that he is shaking all over and she laughs at it. Shield looks at this guy. In the eyes of the Lord, he looks weak. The mage doubts whether this young man can handle it at all. But on the other hand, since this is the final, he somehow got here too. That means he has already passed all the stages up to the final. Caprice looks around and sees Shield. She smirks and asks when he got here. The demoness is ready to kill Oliver. While the young man asks to be lenient towards him, the fighters take up positions and begin the fight. Caprice grabs Oliver with two swords and smugly says that he hopes he doesn't fall too quickly. Shield is outraged by the demoness's speed, because if this continues, they will lose a valuable fighter. The Lord uses his magic and puts up a barrier. Something happened, and it seems he didn't make it in time. Caprice doesn't understand what's going on either. She can't find Oliver. He's disappeared from her sight. It turns out he's standing behind her. She doesn't understand how he dodged the attack so quickly. She assumes it was just an accident. Caprice notices the boy. She laughs at Oliver and says he's a good escapist. She decides to try something else. The demoness pins him against the wall so that he has nowhere to run. Shield tries to get the barrier up in time. This time, Caprice says goodbye to Oliver and attacks him furiously. He closes his eyes. No one understands whether he really wants to die. The young man still stands thoughtfully with his eyes closed. The whole atmosphere of the battle has changed. Caprice is ready to fight, but she still looks wary. She yells at the young man to stop his tricks and start fighting fair and square. Shield screams. He now understands that it was not Oliver who needed the barrier, but the demoness. The battle is still going on, but it seems Caprice does not agree with her lord. However, the young man defeats her. The strong blow turned the walls into ruins, and the demoness was now lying on them. Shield called out to her. The tired young man stood there imperturbably. The Lord was incredibly surprised, and the demoness didn't even understand what had happened. Oliver stares at everything. It was an instant, crushing defeat. Oliver stands quietly to the side while Shield shouts Caprice's name, waiting for her reaction. The demoness is wounded. She slowly rises. For her, this was an unknown attack. Caprice is eager to fight again. She says that even if it was an accident, Oliver did a good job. Now she won't hold back either. The young man asks, slightly smugly, if they still want to continue. The demoness is furious, ready to cut off his head. Oliver closes his eyes and prepares for battle. The atmosphere has changed again, but this time the heroes feel it in a completely different way. Caprice does not understand why this is happening. However, she is eager to destroy the young man with all her might. Oliver goes on the attack with his sword. He hits the demoness with such force that she shakes. The boy seemed to have become completely different, and his strength had increased greatly. This made Caprese even more angry. The demoness attacks aggressively, she does not stop. However, Oliver is also unwavering. Caprese notices that when the boy closes his eyes, it's as if she's fighting another person. While she tries to understand, Oliver just smirks. An enraged Caprese is sure that they will not get anywhere this way, and everything needs to be resolved quickly. However, her speed does not help her. The young man still grabs her, and she drops her sword. He throws her to the ground. The demoness doesn't even have time to realize anything. Caprese lies on the ground and Oliver places his sword next to her head, saying that we need to end this. The young man makes a powerful swing of the sword. The demoness does not even try to escape. She proudly says that the defeated one can only accept death. Shield quickly covers Caprese with a barrier, and then excitedly announces that that's it. The Lord praises both fighters. He says that they did well. He also announces that from today, Oliver leads the knights. Shield shakes the guy's hand and says they'd be happy to work with him, but Oliver doubts that's true. Suddenly, Caprese shouts to the young man that he, as the commander of the knights, must take this calmly. She runs after him, and he runs away from her. Everyone is discussing Oliver's amazing power. Shield suggests that it is a gift. Suddenly, Azazel appears and asks the Lord if he even knew about gifts. Apparently, Oliver's gift is the gift of possession. The demon explains that the gift is something different from magic. It is a power that ignores the laws of the world. It turns out that Oliver's gift of possession is activated the moment he relaxes, and then it is as if someone else enters him. This news makes Shield wonder, if the boy is possessed, does this mean that a spirit lives inside him? Caprese jokingly chases Oliver with a sword, while Azazel and Shield discuss how the boy could most likely be possessed by over 1,000 swordmasters. It often happens that someone unlucky can be caught. Oliver, in tears, asks not to hit him with a sword, but the demoness is amused. She encourages him, reminding him that he is now the commander of the knights. Shield watches them. Now he is not sure of his decision. Shield decides that even though he lost, Caprese is also quite strong and will probably be useful to Oliver. Lord decides to bet on the young man's potential and trust him. The Lord knows that the army is fine, so Azazel has collected all the information on the current taxes. He offers Shield to take a look. The Lord carefully examines the demon's records. Van Gogh seemed to tax everything. There was a tax on the birth of a boy, a tax on being overweight, a tax on being overcast at midday. Even breathing was taxed under these laws. Shield was furious, and he ordered all these taxes to be abolished. Azazel explains that there was even a tax on bad breath. Shield shouts that all of this needs to be removed and the taxes rewritten from scratch. However, the tax on obesity seemed funny to the Lord, and he decided to leave it. The Lord ordered the demon to take care of the taxes, and Shield himself will inspect the lands and put up barriers. He tells Azazel to follow him to find out what the inhabitants need. The demon replies that the Lord can entrust him with this. Shield goes out into the city. Suddenly, a boy runs up to him, calling him the cool uncle from last time. The boy's mother, in tears, tells her child that you can't talk about a lord like that. Shield doesn't pay attention to this, and says that everything is fine. People call their lord a generous and amazing person. The citizens come out to the square. They express their immense gratitude to the new lord for abolishing senseless taxes. Shield is happy about this. He asks the subjects how they live now. Farmers say he has given them motivation, and their crop yields have increased. People compare Shield to a deity. Shield is deeply embarrassed. He admits he was worried that people thought he was a tyrant. Everyone vigorously denies it. The townspeople say that only those who deserve it are punished. One plump man wants to make a gentle objection about the tax on obesity, but he doesn't have time. Someone covers his mouth with a hand. The Lord enjoys looking at his subjects. Suddenly, he hears screams. Someone touched Damon's child. A human child teases a demon child. He says that it is not his fault, but the fault of the demons themselves, because they entered the city of people. The demon father is furious. He wants to say something, but he is interrupted. Shield tells the demon to wait. The Lord wants to hear the human side as well. The demons believe that the Lord will never side with them because he is also a human. The demon child cries and tells that the human child was the first to bully him because he is a demon. Shield asks the boy to tell his version. The boy declares that demons have no place in a human village. Shield tells him that there is nothing that can be done about it. The Lord imprisons the boy in a barrier. Shield asks the boy if he thinks demons are different from humans. The child replies that they have weird ears and are generally different. Lord says that the boy is also different from others, pointing to his freckles. Shield asks him a question. If he himself is not like everyone else, does this mean that he cannot be friends with others? Stuttering a little, the boy says that he can. The Lord explains that it is not right to say that someone cannot be a friend because of their appearance. He asks the boy if he would be sad if he was not accepted because of his freckles. The boy confirms this. Shield says that to him, both humans and demons are like family, so he wants everyone to live in peace. He asks the boy if that will work. The child hesitantly agrees. The human child asks the demon child for forgiveness. Now they are fine and become friends. Shield watches them and realizes how simple children are and how wonderful it is. Only the other demons were amused by the Lord's words, but Azazel thought doubtfully. A barrier is visible above the city. The barrier continues to expand under the influence of Shield's magic. Azazel looks at the Lord's magic and talks about the power of people. According to him, it's as if he's watching a miracle. Shield doesn't understand what's so special about barrier magic, but the demon doesn't think so. For the Lord is to connect the constructed barriers, and a new great power will be born. Shield and Azazel look at the country under the barrier dome. Lord says that even though it is his country, it is truly beautiful. The demon agrees with the Lord. Shield says that Azazel looks happy. Azazel admits that he is truly pleased that he can now live in peace. He reveals that he did not participate in the war of the gods of his own free will. Shield puts his hand on the demon's shoulder and tells him that he has worked hard this month. However, Azazel replies that he was just doing his job. Lord says he likes Azazel's cool attitude. Shield finally asks the demon what he's wanted to know for a long time. Does the demon like it here? Is he glad that the seal has been removed? Azazel falters. Lord realizes that he wants too much for now. The demon admits that he feels much better now than he did 30 years ago. Shield notices the demon's smile and begins to jokingly ask the demon if he can smile, but Azazel solemnly denies it. The Lord is amused and suggests throwing a party to celebrate the completion of the barrier. Meanwhile, in the Helena kingdom, the capture of Shield is still being discussed. The knight captain is forced to beg Akane for help. The girl mockingly and haughtily says that, apparently, everything is really urgent, since the arrogant captain of the knights, famous for his pride, bowed his head before her. The captain says that since Gaimag hasn't returned, that leaves only her. She must bring Shield. If he can't do it alive, then a corpse will do. Akane accepts the captain's offer. This is a great chance for her to learn shield magic. The girl warns that she will not follow orders and will act as she wants. She says that she is looking forward to it. A dark-haired girl walks down the corridor. She notices Akane and doesn't understand what she's doing there. The girl is outraged by the captain's decision. After all, the chosen magician is an uncontrollable egoist who ignores absolutely everything. The captain gets very angry and asks the girl what she can do herself. She replies that if he gives her 2 knights to accompany her, she will decide everything herself. She speaks thoughtfully about having a weapon. Meanwhile, Olivier doesn't understand whether it really takes a whole month to get to Mirai. The girl is completely lost. She is very angry because she is sure that she did not lose her way, so why can't she get there? Suddenly, a huge, terrifying monster appears in front of her. Olivier defeats it with ease. An old man appears and tells her that she has defeated the very monster that has been tormenting his village for many years. He compares the girl to a goddess. The old man begs Olivier to stay with them in the village for at least 1 day. The girl replies that she is very busy, so only for 1 day. The old man thanks her very much. They are called out. Olivier finds herself on the throne. People worship her. She has absolutely no idea what's going on. The villagers consider the girl a goddess who saved the village. However, Olivier only gets angry and says that she has no time for such fun. The girl jumps up and leaves, saying that she is going to Shield. The villagers worry that she wants to leave them. She feels magic, but does not understand what it is. Azazel suddenly appears, asking who said Shield's name. The demon asks who she is. He says that rumor has it that a riot is brewing here and some upstart is playing queen, and with a throne, which means she took her game too seriously. Olivier does not understand what Azazel is talking about. He replies that whoever threatens the Lord will disappear. The girl asks the demon a counter-question, trying to find out who he is. Azazel directs his magic at her. He lightly touches her hair, but it is already beginning to rot. This magic is unfamiliar to Olivier. The demon explains that it is decomposition magic, but he did not expect the girl to react so quickly. He notices her abilities. Olivier again says that she needs to meet Shield. Azazel notices that she keeps repeating the name. The demon asks if the girl will not give up the rebellion as long as she lives. Olivier does not understand what he is talking about and asks again. Azazel wants to send the girl to hell, but Olivier demands to wait because if he strikes here, the village will suffer. Olivier runs away. A demon follows her and tells her that only death awaits her if she runs away. However, she firmly decides that she must first leave the village. The girl understands that it is too difficult to reflect the magic of decay, so she needs to find a moment and break through. Olivier has found a position from which the village is no longer threatened, which means she can use all her power. Now the girl starts attacking too. Azazel thinks that she is just tired of running away. While he was talking to her, he already missed something. Olivier tied the demon's legs. She smirked and said that he shouldn't have chased her without a plan. With the same mockery, the demon answered that she would regret not tying his hands. Azazel hits the girl in the arm. It looks like a burn that will take too long to heal. The girl decides that she needs to retreat. The demon tries to figure out where the attack is coming from. Suddenly he finally notices. Olivier created web-like threads out of magic and scattered them everywhere. If the demon moves, it will lose its head. Azazel is at a dead end. The girl mockingly wishes the demon to enjoy the evening air, and then disappears. Azazel decides that he needs to report to the Lord. He calls the bat to him. Shield notices Azazel's bat. It has brought him a message. The Lord does not understand why the goddess, whom even Azazel had difficulty dealing with, staged a rebellion. Shield wants to offer the bat some nuts, but she, like Azazel, immediately disappears. Meanwhile, Olivier will not meet Shield anytime soon.